The night she dialed the number she never should have kept. She was bleeding on a bathroom floor in a locked house, with a broken arm tucked against her ribs, and a man on the other side of the door promising to kill her before sunrise. In her shaking hand sat a business card she'd hidden for 3 years, a name in black ink, a number she'd never dared to call. Tonight, she had no choice. Stay with us until the very end of this story. Drop a like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from so I can see how far Lena's story has traveled tonight. The rain came down on Ridgeview the way it always did in late October. Slow at first, then steady, then loud enough to sound like someone walking on the roof. Lena Carter heard it through the bathroom tile against her cheek. She didn't remember how she'd gotten to the floor. She remembered the kitchen. She remembered the glass hitting the cabinet behind her head, and the way Ryan's voice had gone quiet the way it always did right before it got bad. Quiet was the warning. Quiet meant he'd already decided. After that, her memory went in pieces. The edge of the hallway table, the carpet, the sound her own wrist made when she tried to catch herself, a sound she felt more than heard, like a dry branch snapping inside a pillow. Now she was here, locked in, her back against the tub, her right arm lying across her lap the wrong way, the forearm bent in a place it wasn't supposed to bend. She looked down at it and felt almost nothing, which was worse than the pain would have been. Lena. His voice came through the door. She flinched. Lena, open the door. The doorknob rattled. Not hard. Not yet. That was part of it too. The slow build. He wanted her to hear him thinking. Baby, come on. Open the door. Let me see you. Let me look at you, okay? She pressed her good hand against her mouth to keep her breathing quiet. Her lips were split. She tasted copper. Her teeth felt loose on one side, and she couldn't tell if that was real or just fear making everything feel like it was falling apart. The knob rattled again, harder. Lena, I am asking you nice. A pause. You know what happens when I stop asking nice? She closed her eyes. She had lived inside that sentence for 5 years. You know what happens. She knew what happened when dinner was 5 minutes late. She knew what happened when she laughed at something on TV he hadn't laughed at first. She knew what happened when the neighbor, Mr. Presley, waved at her from across the driveway, and she'd been dumb enough, weak enough, female enough, that was the word Ryan used, female, to wave back. She knew what happened when she forgot, when she remembered, when she cried, when she didn't cry. She knew what happened when she got quiet, because quiet meant she was thinking, and thinking meant she might be thinking about leaving. Her purse was on the floor beside her. She didn't remember grabbing it. That was the part that scared her, actually. That some small animal part of her, some piece that still wanted to live, had grabbed the purse on the way down the hall while the rest of her was busy getting hit. She looked at it now like it was a stranger's. Lena, softer this time, coaxing. Baby, I'm sorry, okay? I am. I had a bad day. You know I had a bad day. Come out here and let me see you. Her hand moved toward the purse without asking her permission. Lena, I swear to God. And there it was, the flip, the fast turn, the knob rattling so hard the whole door shook in its frame. Open this door. Open this fucking door right now, or I swear to Christ. She unzipped the purse one-handed. Her fingers were shaking so badly she had to try twice. Inside, her wallet, a half-empty pack of mints, a tube of lip balm that had melted and re-hardened into a weird shape, a hair tie, a receipt from the grocery store, 3 weeks old, because Ryan looked at the receipts. He looked at everything. And underneath all of it, slid into the zipper pocket she'd prayed 100 times he would never check, a single business card, heavy paper, thick enough to feel expensive just holding it, cream-colored, plain black lettering, Adrian Voss. Below the name, nothing but a phone number. No company, no title, no email, no logo. She remembered the day he'd given it to her. 3 years ago. Lunch service at Ambrose on 4th, the restaurant she used to work at before Ryan decided a wife of his wasn't going to wait tables for other men. Adrian Voss had come in alone, sat at table 11, ordered the Bronzino, barely touched it, and tipped her $400 on a $90 check. She'd chased him to the door thinking she'd misread the receipt. Sir, I think there was a mistake. He'd turned around. He hadn't smiled. He had one of those faces that didn't really smile, not in the normal way. He was tall, older than her by maybe 15 years. Dark suit that fit him the way suits fit people in movies, not the way they fit people in real life. "No mistake," he'd said. "This is way too much." You were kind to an older woman at the next table. She couldn't read the menu. You read it to her. You sat down to do it. Lena had opened her mouth and then closed it. "That's worth something," Adrian Voss had said. "Most people only notice what's worth something when they need it." He'd reached into his jacket and taken out a card. "If you ever need anything," he'd said, "and I mean anything, Miss Carter, call this number. Day or night. It will reach me." She'd taken the card because it felt rude not to. She'd hidden it because Ryan went through her things. She'd forgotten about it because she'd had to forget about it, the way she'd had to forget about a lot of things, and 3 years had gone by, and her world had shrunk down to one house and one man and the space between his two hands. And now she was on the bathroom floor, and the card was in her palm, and Ryan was kicking the door. The first kick shook the mirror. "Lena." The second kick cracked the frame. She fumbled her phone out of the purse. Her thumb wouldn't work right. She had to wipe blood off the screen before the face recognition would open it. "Lena, I'm not playing with you." She dialed. She didn't breathe. 1 ring, 2 rings. He won't pick up. It's been 3 years. He doesn't even remember me. He was being nice. It was a nice thing rich people do to feel like, "Voss?" The voice was exactly as she remembered. Low. Flat. Awake. Even though it was almost 2 in the morning. Lena opened her mouth. Nothing came out. On the other side of the door, wood splintered. A long tearing sound. Ryan was using his shoulder now. "Hello," Adrian Voss said, calm, patient. "Who is this?" "I..." Her voice broke on the word. She pressed her hand over her mouth again, harder. I'm sorry. There was a pause on the line, just 1 beat, maybe 2, and then his voice changed. It didn't get louder. It didn't get softer. It got precise, the way a surgeon's hand gets precise when a heart starts to fail on the table. "Miss Carter." She started crying, silent, awful. The kind of crying where your whole body shakes and nothing comes out of your face except water. "Lena, listen to me. Are you hurt?" "Yes." "Are you alone in the room you're in?" "Yes." "Is someone trying to get to you?" "Yes." "Is it the man you live with?" She nodded before she remembered he couldn't see her. "Yes." The door jumped in its frame. Ryan was screaming something now, but Lena couldn't hear the words anymore. Her ears were ringing. There was a high, thin sound in her head like a kettle that wouldn't stop. "Lena." Adrian Voss's voice cut through it like a clean line through water. "Give me your address." I don't breathe. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Tell me the street." Birchwood Lane. Number 4042. City. Ridgeview. It's outside. It's outside the... I know where Ridgeview is. She heard something on his end. A door opening. Footsteps on stone. Fast. She heard a man's voice in the background. Someone else. Someone saying, "Sir," and right away, "Sir." And she realized Adrian Voss was already moving. "Lena," he said, 22 minutes. Do you hear me? 22 minutes. "He's going to kill me." The words came out of her before she knew she'd said them. "Mr. Voss, he's going to kill me. He said he was going to... He is not going to touch you again." Not a promise. Not a reassurance. He said it the way other men say it's Tuesday. A fact. The door splintered. A long, jagged piece of wood broke off near the hinge. She saw Ryan's eye through the gap. Wild, red-rimmed, too bright. "Who the fuck are you talking to?" She dropped the phone. It hit the tile screen down. She couldn't tell if the call was still connected. She couldn't tell anything. Her arm was screaming now, the numbness finally wearing off, and the pain was coming in like a tide. "Who is that, Lena?" Ryan's voice through the broken door was not the coaxing voice anymore. It wasn't even the yelling voice. It was a third voice, one she'd only heard twice before. Once the night their dog ran away. Once the night he'd held her face in the sink. "Nobody," she whispered. "Open this door. Please, open the door, Lena." Her good hand found the phone on the tile. She didn't dare lift it to her ear. She just pressed it flat against her chest, hoping, praying the line was still open, that the man on the other end could still hear her breathing. She pushed herself up. Her legs almost didn't work. She had to use the sink. In the mirror, she caught a glimpse of herself, and for a second she didn't know who she was looking at. The woman in the glass had blood down the side of her face from her hairline. Her left eye was already swelling shut. There was a smear of red across her collarbone where she'd grabbed herself. She looked like a woman on the news, the kind you watched and thought, God, how did nobody help her? The lock turned under her fingers. She didn't remember deciding to turn it. Maybe she thought if she opened the door herself, it would be less bad. Maybe she thought nothing. Maybe her body was just tired of being hit through wood. Ryan was breathing hard on the other side. He was a big man. He had been a good-looking man once, in a rough kind of way. Broad shoulders, strong jaw, blue eyes that his mother used to say could charm a judge. Lena had believed that face. 5.5 years ago, at a friend's wedding, she'd believed that face. Now the face was red and wet and wrong. His pupils were pinned. She could smell the whiskey on him from 3 feet away, and underneath the whiskey, the other smell, the sweat smell, the chemical smell, the thing he took on bad nights that he swore to her he didn't take anymore. Who were you talking to? Nobody. Don't lie to me. I'm not. Ryan, I'm not. He grabbed her by the hair. He did it casually, the way you grab a bag off a counter. That was the part she would remember later, in the quiet. Not the pain, the casualness of it, like her head was just an object that belonged to him. He pulled her out of the bathroom. Her broken arm knocked against the doorframe and she screamed, and he slapped a hand over her mouth and slammed her into the hallway wall hard enough that a picture fell off its hook and the glass in the frame broke on the floor between them. Who were you talking to? She tried to say nobody again. It came out muffled against his palm. I saw the phone, Lena. I saw the phone. You think I'm stupid? You think I'm stupid? His other hand went around her throat. Not squeezing, not yet, just resting there. Thumb on one side, fingers on the other. A reminder. A preview. She had stopped crying. She noticed that, somewhere far away in her own head. She had stopped crying and her body had gone very, very still, the way rabbits go still in the grass when the hawk is already overhead. I'll tell you who you were talking to, Ryan said. His voice had gone quiet again. The dangerous quiet. You were talking to some guy, weren't you? Some guy. You've got some guy. Ryan, don't Ryan me. Ryan, I swear to... Who is he? The hand on her throat tightened. And right then, right at that exact second, Lena Carter, for the first time in 5 years, stopped being afraid. It didn't feel like courage. That was the strange part. Later, in the therapist's office in a city 500 miles away, she would try to explain this and fail. It didn't feel brave. It felt like something inside her had simply run out, like a battery finally dying, like a light she'd been keeping on in a dark house for half a decade, and the bulb had blown, and now it was just dark, and the dark was almost a relief. She looked up into Ryan Hale's eyes, and she said very clearly, very softly, "His name is Adrian Voss." Ryan froze. She watched it happen in real time. The name meant nothing to him. She could see that. He was a bartender at a place called Miller's that he half owned on paper and didn't really run. He didn't move in any world where a name like that would mean anything. But the way she said it, that meant something to him. She hadn't said it like a woman naming her lover. She'd said it like a woman naming a weapon. His hand loosened on her throat, just slightly. What? His name, Lena said, and her voice was hoarse and cracked in her own, is Adrian Voss, and he's coming here, right now. You're lying. I'm not. You're lying, Lena. Look at the phone. She nodded, barely, toward the bathroom floor where the phone still lay face down against the tile, the screen glow leaking out at the edges. The call is still open. Go, listen. Go. He didn't move. For one long, strange moment, the whole house was quiet. The rain on the roof, the dripping from the kitchen sink that had been broken for 2 months because he kept saying he'd fix it and never did. The tick of the hallway clock. Then Ryan laughed. It wasn't a good laugh. It was the kind of laugh men make when they're trying to convince themselves. Some guy, he said. Some guy you fucked once. You think some guy is going to come here at 2 in the morning for you. He leaned in close, close enough that his forehead touched hers, close enough that she felt the wet of his breath on her bitten lip. Nobody is coming for you, Lena. Nobody has ever come for you. You know why? Because nobody cares. You're mine. That's the whole story. That's the only story there ever was. He let go of her throat. She slid half an inch down the wall before her legs caught her. Now, he said, you're going to go clean up. You're going to stop bleeding on my carpet. And when you come back out here, we're going to have a conversation about what you just tried to do. He turned around and walked into the kitchen. She heard him open the freezer. She heard the clink of a glass. She heard him pour. She stood in the hallway with her broken arm and her broken mouth and her broken face, and she looked at the front door across the living room, and she understood the way you understand things in dreams, that she could not run. Not like this. Not on these legs. He would catch her before she made the porch, and this time he would not stop. So she did the only thing she could do. She picked up the phone. The call was still connected. The call had been connected the whole time. She lifted it very slowly to her ear. Mr. Voss, she whispered. I'm 17 minutes out, Adrian Voss said. His voice had not changed. Not a tremor, not a rush. The same surgeon quiet as before, the same someone doing arithmetic calm. I'm bringing 3 people with me, he said. One of them is a physician. One of them is a lawyer. The third is a man named Hector, whose job it is to make sure nothing else happens to you tonight. Do you understand me, Lena? Yes. I need you to do 2 things. Okay? First, if he comes back toward you, do not fight him. Do not run. Do not argue. Go slack. Go quiet. Let him believe he's won. Keep your phone in your hand. Can you do that? Yes. Second, a pause. I need your word on something. Anything. When I walk through that door, Lena, I need you to understand that whatever you see me do, whatever you see, whatever you hear, I will not hurt you. I will never hurt you. But I'm not coming there to reason with him. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? She looked down the hall. She could see Ryan's shadow moving in the kitchen, pouring his second glass. He always had a second glass before he came back to finish what he'd started. I understand, she said. Good girl. He didn't say it the way Ryan used to say it. Ryan used to say good girl like a leash. Adrian Voss said it like a father saying you did good, kid. And Lena almost cracked in half right there in the hallway, because she hadn't realized how long it had been since anyone had said anything kind to her at all. 17 minutes, he said. Stay on the line. Okay. I'm right here. I'm not hanging up. Okay. She slid down the wall until she was sitting. She put the phone on speaker, very low, and tucked it inside the collar of her shirt so he wouldn't see the screen. She could still hear him breathing on the other end. Steady, even, like a metronome, like something to count to. Ryan came back into the hallway with a glass in his hand. He looked at her on the floor. He smiled. The smile wasn't a smile. It was a shape his mouth made when he was trying to decide something. You know what your problem is, Lena? He crouched down in front of her. The ice in his glass clinked. Your problem is you don't appreciate what you've got. He reached out and touched her cheek, gently. The gentle was the worst part. The gentle always came before. I give you a house. I give you a car. I give you a ring. I give you a life. And all I ask, all I have ever asked, is that you act like a goddamn wife. And instead you sit there on the floor of my bathroom calling some guy. Ryan. Shh. Ryan, please. Shh, shh. Hey, look at me. She looked at him. His eyes were wet now. That was new. He was doing the crying thing. The crying thing meant he was about to either kiss her or hit her, and she could never predict which, not in 5 years. I love you, Ryan Hale said. And through the phone, pressed against her collarbone, Adrian Voss said, very quietly, 14 minutes. She didn't know how she survived those 14 minutes. Later, she would try to remember, and she wouldn't be able to. The mind protects itself. She would remember it in flashes, the way you remember a fever dream. The taste of salt on her lip, the pattern of the hallway wallpaper, little faded blue flowers she had hated from the day they'd moved in, the smell of whiskey and sweat, and the rosewater lotion she'd put on that morning because, for some reason, some stupid reason, she had wanted to smell nice even though nobody was going to see her. She remembered Ryan sitting on the hallway floor across from her with his back against the other wall, drinking, talking, going through all of it, the whole catalog, the things she'd done wrong, the things she was going to do wrong, the reasons he was the way he was, the reason his father had been the way he'd been, the reasons none of it was his fault and all of it was hers. She remembered nodding at the right times. She remembered her broken arm going numb again, which she knew wasn't good but couldn't make herself care about. She remembered thinking at one point, with a calmness that scared her, if the man on the phone doesn't come, I'm going to die in this hallway, and nobody is going to know for 3 days because nobody calls me anymore. That was the sentence, nobody calls me anymore. She didn't cry about it. She had run out of crying hours ago. But the sentence sat in her chest like a stone, and she understood, maybe for the first time all the way understood, how much of her Ryan had already killed, how much work he had already done, how little of Lena Carter was left in this house. And then, somewhere outside, somewhere past the rain, a car. Not a fast car. Not a loud car. That was the first thing she noticed, in the part of her that was still paying attention. It wasn't screaming up the street with its lights off like in the movies. It was just a car, a quiet, heavy, expensive-sounding car, pulling up at a normal speed and parking at the curb. A car door closed. One, then two more. Softly. Ryan didn't hear it. He was too far inside his own voice, too deep in his second glass. Footsteps on the porch. The doorbell rang. Ryan stopped mid-sentence. He looked at the front door, then at Lena, then at the front door again. "Who the hell is that?" "I told you," Lena whispered. He stood up so fast he knocked his glass over. The whiskey spilled across the hardwood and started soaking into the edge of the rug. "You did not. I told you. Lena, I swear to God." The doorbell rang again. And then a voice through the door. A man's voice. Calm, polite. The kind of polite you hear in banks and funeral homes. "Mr. Hale, my name is Adrian Voss. I'd like a word." Ryan's face went white. It wasn't the name. Lena could see that. The name still meant nothing to him. It was something else. It was the tone of the voice, the absolute bone-deep, unhurried confidence of it. The voice of a man who had never had to raise his voice in his entire adult life because he had never needed to. Some part of Ryan Hale, the animal part, the part that had kept his ancestors alive on the plains 100,000 years ago, recognized that voice for what it was. It was the voice of something higher on the food chain. "Ryan," Lena said softly. He turned and looked at her, and for the first time in 5 years, Lena Carter saw fear in her husband's eyes. Not anger, not contempt, not the wounded boy thing he put on when he wanted her to forgive him. Fear. Actual, clean, simple fear. "You don't have to answer the door," she heard herself say. "You can run out the back." She didn't know why she said it. Maybe she wanted him to. Maybe some part of her, even now, some sick, broken part trained over half a decade, still wanted to protect him. Or maybe, and this was the thing she would think about later in a hospital bed 400 miles away, maybe she wanted him to try, because she wanted to watch him fail. "Lena," Ryan said. His voice was small now, thin, a boy's voice. "Lena, what did you do?" "I made a phone call, Ryan." "Lena, I made a phone call," she said. That's all I did." The doorbell rang a third time. "Mr. Hale," the voice through the door again, still polite, still patient. "I'd prefer to do this the civilized way, but I will do it the other way if I have to. You have about 20 seconds to decide." Ryan looked at the door. He looked at the hallway that led to the back of the house. He looked at Lena on the floor. And Lena watched, actually watched, with her own eyes, in real time, the exact moment that Ryan Hale understood he had lost. It wasn't dramatic. That was the thing that always surprised her about it afterward. It wasn't a big moment. There was no lightning, no music, just a short, stupid man in a cheap t-shirt in a cheap hallway, realizing that the rules of his whole small life had just been replaced by rules he didn't know. He walked to the door. His hand shook on the knob. He opened it. Lena couldn't see past him from where she sat. She could only see pieces, the edge of a dark coat, a pair of polished shoes wet from the rain. Behind them, further back on the porch, two more shapes, one shorter, one wide as a doorway, and a voice, close now, directly on the other side of her husband. "Mr. Hale." Who the hell are... My name is Adrian Voss. May I come in? Who the hell do you think you are coming to my... Mr. Hale. The voice did not rise. It simply sharpened, the way a knife sharpens. I am not asking. Lena heard Ryan take one step backward. She heard the front door open wider. She heard the soft, expensive sound of a man stepping into her house for the first time. Adrian Voss came down the hallway. He was exactly as she remembered, and nothing like she remembered. The same tall frame, the same quiet dark suit, rain-speckled at the shoulders, the same face that didn't really know how to smile. He was older in the hallway light than he'd been at the restaurant. There was gray at his temples now that hadn't been there 3 years ago, a line between his eyebrows that looked like it had been earned. He looked at Ryan once, one short, unimpressed glance, the way you might look at a stain on a carpet. Then he looked past him, at her, on the floor, with her broken arm and her bleeding mouth and the wallpaper with the little blue flowers she hated. And for just 1 second, just one, Lena saw something move across Adrian Voss's face that was not calm at all. It was gone before she could name it. He crossed the hallway in 3 steps. He knelt down in front of her, careful not to touch her, careful not to come too close. Miss Carter, he said. Mr. Voss? May I? He held out his hand, palm up. A question, not a command. She looked at his hand. She looked at his face. And for the first time in 5 years, Lena Carter made a choice that was her own. She put her good hand in his. Get me out of here, she whispered. Adrian Voss closed his fingers around hers, gently, like she was made of something he didn't want to break. Yes, ma'am, he said. And behind him, in the doorway, Ryan Hale opened his mouth to say something, some last, ugly, desperate thing, the kind of thing small men say when they feel the ground move under them. And the man named Hector stepped into the hallway and put one enormous hand flat against Ryan's chest and said very quietly, Sit down, Mr. Hale. The adults are talking. Outside, the rain kept coming. Inside, for the first time in 5 years, Lena Carter was not alone. The hallway smelled like whiskey and blood and the wet wool of Adrian Voss's coat. Lena didn't move. She couldn't, really. Her legs had stopped cooperating somewhere around the 10th minute of Ryan's kitchen speech. And now that somebody else was in the house, now that she didn't have to hold herself upright for survival anymore, her whole body had quietly decided it was done. She just sat there, on the hallway floor, with her hand inside Adrian Voss's. He didn't pull her up. That was the first thing she noticed about him, in that close-up way you notice things when you're hurt. He didn't grab her. He didn't lift. He didn't move her like she was furniture. He just held her hand warm and steady, and waited for her to be ready to move. Behind him, in the doorway, the second shape from the porch stepped into the light. She was a small woman, maybe 50, maybe 55, gray hair cropped short, a black canvas bag slung across one shoulder. She had the kind of face that had seen a lot of things and stopped being surprised by any of them. She didn't look at Ryan. She didn't look at the broken bathroom door. She looked straight at Lena, and her expression did something that almost made Lena cry again. It didn't pity her. It just took inventory. Hi, honey, the woman said. My name's Dr. Navarro. Ruth, I'm going to take care of you, okay? Lena nodded. She tried to say something. Her voice wouldn't come. That's all right. You don't have to talk. Can I sit? Another nod. Dr. Navarro set her bag down on the hardwood and crouched. Not knelt, crouched. The way people who worked ER night shifts learned to crouch without hurting their knees. She opened the bag without looking at it. Her hands were already moving. I'm going to look at your arm first. I'm not going to touch it yet. I just want to look. Is that okay? Okay? Good. Ruth glanced up at Adrian very briefly, and something passed between them without a word. Then she looked back at Lena. Did you lose consciousness at any point tonight, sweetheart? I don't know. Maybe. I don't remember getting to the bathroom. That's okay. We'll figure it out. Further down the hallway, near the front door, there was a short, wet sound. Lena looked past Dr. Navarro's shoulder. Hector had Ryan pinned against the wall. He wasn't hitting him. That was the odd thing. He wasn't even being rough. Not really. He had one enormous hand flat on Ryan's chest and the other on Ryan's wrist, and he had simply, mechanically, stopped Ryan from being a person who could move. Ryan was talking. Spit was flying out of his mouth. Lena couldn't hear the words from where she sat, but she recognized the shape of them, the rhythm of them. Do you know who I am? Do you know whose house this is? I'll sue your ass. I'll have your badge. The things small men said when they still thought the old rules applied. Hector did not answer. Hector looked bored. Hector looked like a man waiting at a bus stop. The third figure from the porch stepped into the hallway now. A thin man in a charcoal suit, glasses, carrying a slim leather folio under one arm. He didn't come toward Lena. He went straight to Ryan. "Mr. Hale," he said. "Who the f—" "My name is Jonah Klein. I represent Mr. Voss's personal office. I'd like you to listen carefully to what I'm about to say, because I'm only going to say it once, and your life for the next 48 hours is going to depend on how well you listened." Ryan stopped talking. His mouth was still open, but no sound was coming out, which Lena would later realize was the first time in 5 years she had ever seen her husband shut up without being told to twice. "Very good," Jonah Klein said, mild as a librarian. "Now, Mr. Hale, you've broken a woman's arm tonight. We believe you've also fractured her orbital bone. We'll know more in a few minutes. You have, by our rough count, committed no fewer than 4 separate felonies inside this house in the last 3 hours, and I haven't even looked upstairs yet. Are you with me so far?" Ryan made a sound like a tire losing air. "I'll take that as a yes. Here's what is going to happen. Dr. Navarro is going to assess Mrs. Hale. Excuse me, Miss Carter. Pardon me, old habit. And once she's stable enough to move, we're going to take her somewhere safe. You are not going to follow. You are not going to call. You are not going to so much as think in her direction. Do you understand? This is my house. Mr. Hale, do you understand?" There was a long pause. Hector tightened his grip very slightly on Ryan's wrist. Lena couldn't see it happen. She just saw Ryan's face change. "Yes," Ryan whispered. "Wonderful. Now." Jonah Klein opened the folio. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a pen. "This is a document that acknowledges in very plain language that you were present at this residence tonight, that you are aware Miss Carter has sustained injuries, and that you consent to her receiving private medical care and transportation by the undersigned parties. It does not admit guilt. It does not waive any rights. It is, frankly, a courtesy. Because what we could be doing right now is calling the Ridgeview Police Department. Would you prefer that, Mr. Hale?" Ryan shook his head. Small, fast. "Sign, please." Hector shifted his hand just enough to let Ryan's arm move. Ryan signed. His signature looked like a child's. He'd been shaking too hard to do better. "Thank you." Jonah closed the folio. "This is not the end of our conversation. It is the beginning. You'll be hearing from us, probably from people you like less than me." He stepped back. Lena watched all of it from the floor the way you watch television in a waiting room, like it was happening but not quite to her. The colors were too bright. Dr. Navarro's hands were moving on her forearm now, feather light, checking for something. Somewhere inside Lena's chest there was a sound that she slowly understood was her own breathing. Adrian Voss crouched back down beside her. He hadn't said a word through any of it. Lena realized that now. From the moment he'd walked through the door, Adrian Voss had said almost nothing. He'd let Jonah talk. He'd let Hector handle the wall. He'd just stood there, at the edge of her vision, like a man watching a machine he owned run correctly. "Miss Carter," he said quietly, "Ruth's going to stabilize your arm here, and then we're going to move you. Can you tell me, is there anything in this house you want to take with you?" Lena blinked at him. The question was so strange. Nobody had asked her a question like that in 5 years. It took her a second to remember how to answer one. Her voice was hoarse. "I don't—" "Take your time." She looked down the hallway, past Hector, past Ryan, who had slid down the wall now and was sitting with his hands in his lap like a punished boy. At the living room beyond, the sad brown couch, the TV Ryan had picked out, the shelf of framed photographs, her and Ryan in Cabo, her and Ryan at his cousin's wedding, her and Ryan outside this exact house on the day they'd bought it, his arm around her shoulders, her smile the kind of smile she now understood wasn't a smile at all. There was nothing in that room that was hers. Not really. She had lived inside it for 5 years, and there was not one single thing in it that she would miss. "There's a book," she said slowly. "Okay." "Upstairs, in the closet. On the top shelf." In the back. It was my mother's. What kind of book? A cookbook. It was hers. That's the only thing. Adrian looked at Hector. Hector nodded and moved. Lena heard his footsteps on the stairs, heavy, unhurried, and somewhere behind her Ruth said very softly, "Okay, honey, I'm going to put the splint on now. It's going to hurt. I won't lie to you, but it will hurt less than it's hurting right now. Count backward from 10 for me." Lena counted. She got to 6 before her voice cracked. Ruth finished at 3. The pain was a white noise that lasted maybe 4 seconds and then got smaller, the way a siren gets smaller when it goes past you. Ruth tucked the splint against Lena's body and looped a soft cloth sling around her neck, and the world came back into focus in jagged pieces. Hector came back down the stairs with a battered brown cookbook in his hand. "Francis Carter's Kitchen," the cover said. Lena's mother had written it on the inside front cover in blue pen when Lena was 8 years old. "For my girl. For when she has her own kitchen someday. All my love, Mama." Her mother had died when Lena was 19. Hector handed her the book, gently, like it was made of glass. "Thank you," Lena whispered. "Ma'am." That was the first word she ever heard Hector say to her. "Ma'am." She would remember it later, the way a person remembers the first kind thing a stranger ever does for them. It was a small, clean word, and he said it the way a son says it to his own mother. And Lena held the cookbook against her chest with her good arm and started crying for the first time since she'd sat down on the bathroom floor. She cried quietly. No sound, just water. Adrian Voss didn't look away. Didn't tell her it was going to be okay. Didn't touch her. He just stayed there, one knee on the hardwood, waiting. After a minute, Lena wiped her face on her shoulder. "I'm ready," she said. "All right." He rose, slow. "Ruth, can she walk?" "She can, but she shouldn't. I'd rather carry her to the car." Lena looked up, alarmed. "I can walk." "Honey, I know you can. That's not the question. I want to walk out of this house on my own feet." Dr. Navarro's eyes softened. She looked at Adrian. Adrian looked at Lena. He studied her face for maybe 2 seconds, and whatever he saw in it, he accepted. "On her own feet," he said. "Ruth on her left. I'll take her right. Slow." That was how Lena Carter left the house at 42 Birchwood Lane for the last time. Not carried, not dragged, not running, walking. Barefoot, she realized, halfway down the hall, that she didn't have shoes on, and nobody stopped to get them, and she didn't want to stop. With her mother's cookbook pressed against her ribs, and a broken arm in a soft blue sling, and a doctor on one side of her and a man in a dark coat on the other side, and her husband of 3.5 years sitting on the hallway floor watching her go. She didn't look at Ryan. She'd thought the whole walk up the hallway that she would. She'd thought she'd want to see his face. She'd thought she'd want to burn it into her memory, the look of him beaten, the look of him small. But when she got to the door, she found that she just didn't care. He had already stopped mattering. In the time it had taken her to stand up, he had become a piece of furniture in a house she was never going to see again. The rain had almost stopped. The car at the curb was a black SUV, long and quiet, with tinted windows and the engine still running. A fourth man Lena hadn't seen was standing beside the open rear door, older, graying, with a driver's posture. He nodded to her once, very respectfully, and stepped aside. Adrian helped her in. She sank into the leather. It was warm. Somebody had turned the seat heaters on before she'd even gotten there. That was the detail that broke her. That someone, somewhere in the last 20 minutes, had thought about the fact that she would be cold. Ruth got in on the other side. Adrian walked around the back of the car. Jonah Klein stayed on the porch, already on his phone, already making the calls he was going to make. Hector stood in the doorway of the house with his arms folded across his chest, looking at Ryan Hale the way a man looks at a dog that has bitten a child. The door shut. The SUV pulled away from the curb. Lena watched the house of 42 Birchwood Lane slide past the window. The porch light Ryan always forgot to turn off. The dying hydrangeas she had planted 2 springs ago that he had refused to let her water during the drought. The mailbox with Hale written on the side in the handwriting of a man Lena had never met, the handyman who had come before them. And then the house was gone. And then the street was gone. And Lena Carter, for the first time in 5 years, was moving in a direction that was not toward him. She cried the whole way to the highway. Not loud, not hysterical, just a slow, steady leak of water down her face that she couldn't stop and didn't try to. Dr. Navarro, on her left, held a tissue near her hand so she could take one whenever she wanted, and pretended not to be watching. Adrian Voss, on her right, sat very still and looked out his own window and gave her privacy in the only way you can give somebody privacy inside a moving car, which is by refusing to witness them. After a while, Lena said thickly, "I don't understand." Adrian turned his head. "Miss Carter, why did you come?" He was quiet for a long moment. The SUV was on the interstate now. The lights of the oncoming cars slid across his face in slow yellow stripes. "Because you called," he said finally. "I know, but—" She pressed the tissue against her good eye. "You don't know me. You had a piece of fish at my restaurant. One time, 3 years ago. You don't—" "Miss Carter, people don't do this." "People don't," Adrian Voss agreed. "I do." She looked at him. In the yellow slide of the highway lights, she tried to read his face and couldn't. She had spent 5 years learning to read one man's face, every twitch, every flicker, every signal of where the next hour was going. And now she was sitting next to a different man, and she had no language for him at all. "Why?" she said again. He looked down at his hands, folded in his lap. "A long time ago," he said, "I did not help somebody. Somebody I should have helped. I was younger. I was busy. I was—" he searched for the word. "Important. I thought I was important. It turned out that being important did not prevent me from being a coward." "What happened to her?" He didn't answer. After a second, Lena understood she wasn't going to get an answer, and she also understood that she didn't need one. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be sorry for me, Miss Carter. It was a long time ago, and it was my fault, and I've paid for it in the coin I had available. Which is to say, I've spent the rest of my life listening. And when people tell me their names in the particular way you told me yours 3 years ago at a restaurant on 4th Street, I listen." "What way did I tell you my name?" He looked at her then. "You said it," he said, like a woman who was trying to remember what it sounded like. Lena didn't know what to do with that. She turned her face toward the window. The SUV kept going. They drove for a long time. Lena didn't know how long. She lost chunks of it to a thin gray half-sleep that wasn't really sleep. It was more like her brain giving up on consciousness in little doses, blinking off and on. At some point, Ruth pressed a bottle of water into her good hand and told her to drink, and Lena drank, and the water tasted so sharply of itself, cold, clean, nothing in it, that it almost made her cry again. Eventually, the highway narrowed. The SUV took an exit she didn't see the sign for. They drove down a 2-lane road for a while, past dark fields, past a farmhouse with one upstairs light on. Then they turned onto a smaller road. Then a smaller one. The last stretch was a long gravel driveway through trees, and at the end of it, a gate, and past the gate a house. House wasn't the right word. House was what Lena had lived in. This was something else. It was set back from the drive in a clearing, 2 stories, long and low, the kind of building people in architecture magazines pretended was modest. Stone and dark wood. Every window lit because somebody had turned every light on before they got there. A woman in a gray sweater was waiting on the front steps with a blanket over her arm. "Where are we?" Lena whispered. "A house I keep," Adrian said simply. "Not the one I live in. One I keep for circumstances. You'll be safe here tonight. You'll be safe here as long as you want to be." The SUV pulled up to the steps. The woman in the gray sweater came down to the car before Adrian had even opened the door. She had kind eyes and graying brown hair pulled back into a low ponytail, and she looked at Lena through the window, the way a grandmother looks at a child coming in from the cold. "Oh, honey," she said when the door opened. "Oh, sweetheart, come on inside." Her name was Marguerite, she said. She had worked for Mr. Voss for 16 years. She was going to get Lena a bath, a warm bath, baby, just warm, not hot, the doctor said not hot, and a clean nightgown and some broth, and then Lena was going to sleep, and Marguerite was going to sit in the chair outside Lena's door all night, and that was not a thing that was up for discussion. Marguerite said all of this while walking Lena up the front steps of the house, one hand hovering near the small of Lena's back without ever actually touching her, And by the time they got to the front door, Lena was crying again for reasons she couldn't have named if somebody had asked. Nobody asked. That was the thing, she would think later, over and over in the weeks that followed. Nobody asked her anything she couldn't answer. She slept that night in a bed that was, by itself, bigger than the bathroom she'd been locked in 6 hours earlier. The sheets were cream-colored and so soft they felt unfamiliar against her skin. There was a glass of water on the nightstand and a small lamp dimmed to almost nothing. Marguerite really did sit in a chair outside the door, reading a paperback, the spine of it visible under the door crack. Lena knew, because she checked, twice, before she let herself close her eyes. She slept for 11 hours. She woke up in pieces. A little bit at 7, a little bit at 9, all the way at 10:30 when sunlight was coming through the gap in the curtains and there was a soft knock at the door. "Honey? It's Marguerite. Can I come in?" "Yes." Her voice was a croak. "Yes, please." Marguerite came in with a tray. Not a breakfast tray, a proper tray, with a pot of tea on it, a bowl of oatmeal with brown sugar and cream on the side, a plate of sliced green apple, 2 slices of toast, and a small glass of orange juice. She set it down on a low table near the window and opened the curtains the rest of the way. Lena sat up slowly. Her whole body hurt. Her face hurt. Her arm hurt in a duller, farther away way than it had last night. Ruth had come in at some point, Lena now remembered, and given her something that had put a layer of warm fog between her and all the sharp edges. "Dr. Navarro wants to come in around 11 and check your arm and your eye," Marguerite said. "And well, Mr. Voss asked if you'd feel up to speaking with him this morning, but only if you wanted to. He said to tell you he's in no hurry." "Where is he?" "Downstairs, ma'am. He hasn't left. He's been on the phone most of the night." "He didn't sleep." "No, ma'am. He doesn't very much when something is happening. It's one of his less charming habits." Lena almost smiled. It surprised her. She touched the split in her lip with the tip of her tongue and thought, "Oh, that's a smile. I still have those. Will you tell him I'll come down after I—" She looked at herself. She was wearing the nightgown she didn't remember Marguerite putting her in. Her hair was a disaster. "After I try to look like a person." "Take all the time you need, baby." "Marguerite?" "Yes, honey." "Thank you." Marguerite's mouth did a small, tight thing, and her eyes got wet for just a half second, and she nodded very firmly and said, "You eat your breakfast," and left the room without saying anything else. Lena ate the breakfast. All of it. She didn't realize until halfway through the oatmeal that it was the first meal she'd had since lunch the day before, and the first meal in, she tried to count, 7 or 8 months that she had actually wanted to eat rather than needed to. She took a bath. A shallow one, one-armed, awkward. She put on the clothes Marguerite had left folded on the chair. Soft, simple things. A gray t-shirt and loose pants that fit her well enough that somebody had clearly thought about her size. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror for a long time. Her left eye was black and swollen almost shut. The side of her mouth was split and scabbing. There was a yellowing bruise on her right cheekbone, and 3 smaller ones in a line across her collarbone where Ryan's hand had rested. Her lip was a mess. Her good eye looked tired in a way that went much deeper than the last 12 hours. She looked at the woman in the glass and she said out loud, "Hi, Lena." She hadn't said her own name to her own face in years. The woman in the glass cried about it for a minute. Then Lena splashed cold water on her face, very carefully around the bad eye, and went downstairs. The house was even bigger in the daylight. High ceilings, soft pale floors, big windows that looked out on— She paused at the top of the landing to take it in. A real, actual meadow, with woods at the far side and a pond she hadn't seen in the dark. It looked less like a house than like a place where people went to get better. Adrian Voss was at the long dining table at the far end of the kitchen, in a white dress shirt rolled up at the sleeves, reading something on an open laptop. He looked up the second her foot touched the bottom stair, which meant he had been listening for it. "Miss Carter?" "Mr. Voss." "Please." He gestured at the chair opposite him. "Sit. Would you like coffee? Tea? Anything?" "I already had breakfast. Marguerite." She tried a small, lopsided version of a smile. It pulled at her lip. "She doesn't take no for an answer." "No, she does not." She sat down. She set her good hand flat on the table because she didn't know what else to do with it. He closed the laptop. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Sunlight was coming through the big east window and making a long gold stripe across the table between them. Somewhere in another room, a radio was playing softly. Classical music, a cello, nothing that had words. "I need to ask you some things," Adrian said finally. "And I need you to understand before I ask them that you don't have to answer any of them. You don't owe me answers. You don't owe me anything. You don't owe me gratitude. You don't owe me a story. You don't owe me the truth about what happened in that house. You are here because you called, and because you called, you stay. That's the arrangement. That's the whole arrangement. Is that clear?" "Yes." "Say it back to me." She swallowed. "I don't owe you anything." "Good." She almost laughed. That's a weird thing to have to practice saying." "It is," he agreed mildly. "I found that most people in your position have forgotten how." He didn't say people in your position with any pity. It was just a fact the way he said it. People in your position, as though she were one of a category he had met before, which, she realized slowly, she probably was. "How many women have you done this for?" she asked. He considered her, and his face did the thing it did instead of smiling, the small movement at the corner of his mouth that wasn't really a smile, but was the closest he seemed to come. 11, he said. "In how long?" 14 years. "Oh." "Counting you? 12. "Oh." Only 2 of them stayed in contact with me after they got on their feet. The others needed to not have my number in their phones, which I respect. Which is the correct answer, frankly. I'm not somebody most people should have in their phone. "Why?" He looked down at his hands. "Because I am not a nice man, Miss Carter." She thought about that for a long time. The man who said that had, 12 hours ago, knelt on a stranger's hallway floor and waited for her to put her hand in his before he moved her. He had sent a doctor, a lawyer, and a large, quiet man named Hector into her house at 2 in the morning. He had not slept. He was wearing a shirt that had a crease in the cuff, where he had rolled the sleeve up wrong, because even rich men sometimes roll a cuff wrong when they're tired. "I think," Lena said carefully, "that I am not ready to have an opinion about whether you're a nice man or not." "That's fair, but—" She stopped, started again. "But I don't think nice is what I needed last night." He didn't answer that. He just nodded, once, slow, and moved on. "The questions," he said. "First, is there anyone, family, friend, anyone, who you want notified that you're safe? Not where you are, just that you're safe." She started to say no, automatically, the way she had said no to every outside-the-house question for 5 years. Then she stopped. "My sister," she said. "Name?" "Danielle Carter." "Danny, she lives in Tallahassee. I haven't spoken to her in—" She tried to count. Her throat closed up. "In a while. Ryan, he didn't like her. He said she was a bitch. He said she was trying to break us up. She wasn't. She was just... She saw him once, at Christmas, years ago, and she saw through him in about 4 hours, and she told me. And I chose him. I chose him over her. Miss Carter. I haven't called my sister in 2.5 years. Miss Carter." She looked up. "That is not a thing you need to hold right now," Adrian said. "You can hold it later. You will hold it later. You will have to. But not in this chair. Not this morning." She nodded. She wiped her face on her sleeve. "Would you like your sister to know you're safe?" "Yes." "Would you like to call her yourself, or would you prefer we reach out through a neutral party?" "I want to call her, but not today. I can't do her voice today." "Understood." He wrote something down on a small pad beside the laptop. His handwriting was neat and small and tilted slightly to the right, like a banker's. "Second question," he said. "Your injuries. Ruth wants to take you to a private facility she trusts, roughly 40 minutes from here, for x-rays and a more thorough exam. She doesn't believe anything is life-threatening, but she does not love the look of your eye. She'd like a specialist to see it today. Are you willing to do that?" "Yes." "Good." Third, and this is the important one. He paused, looked at her directly. "In about 3 hours, my lawyer Jonah is going to call me with a list of options regarding Mr. Hale. I want you to understand what those options are before I make any choices, because some of these choices affect you." "Okay. Option 1, we do nothing. You stay here or somewhere else of your choosing. Mr. Hale is warned, privately, very firmly, never to approach you again. If he complies, his life continues more or less as it is. If he does not comply, we escalate. Option 2. Option 2. We go to the police, you file a report, you press charges. The Ridgeview DA is a friend of, well, he's a friend. The case gets attention. It becomes public. Mr. Hale's name gets dragged. Your name, unfortunately, also gets dragged because that is how these things work. But he goes away for a period of time, possibly a long one, and there is a legal record. Option 3. He was quiet for a beat. Option 3, he said, is that I handle it. What does that mean? It means, Adrian said carefully, that by the end of this week, Ryan Hale no longer has a job, no longer has access to credit, no longer has a place to live, no longer has the cooperation of anyone he has ever done business with, and is given the very strong suggestion, reinforced by people whose suggestions he will take seriously, that he leave the state of Colorado and not return. It means I make sure, personally, through channels you will never see and never have to think about, that he spends the rest of his life being very quiet, very small, and very, very far from you. Lena stared at him. That's not legal. Parts of it are. Parts of it are legal in the way that expensive things are legal. I am being honest with you about that because you deserve honesty, and because I will not do option 3 without your knowledge. I will never do anything on your behalf that you have not agreed to. That is a line I do not cross. Do you understand? Yes. Good. You don't have to decide today. You don't have to decide this week. Jonah will hold the options open for as long as you need them held. The only thing that happens immediately, no matter which path you choose, is this house, and everything in it remain available to you until you say otherwise. And a protective order is filed by end of business, because Ruth will not let me skip that one, and frankly, neither will I. Okay? Miss Carter. Yes. Are you all right? She almost laughed. She almost cried. She did something in between, some small broken sound that surprised her when it came out. No, she said. I am not anywhere near all right. Good. That's the correct answer. A person who said yes, I would worry about. They sat there. The cello kept playing in the other room. A bird landed on the railing of the porch outside and then flew away. Mr. Voss. Adrian, please. Adrian. The name felt strange in her mouth, like a stone she hadn't expected. Can I ask you something honest? Yes. If I stay here, if I take your help, if I let you do whatever you're going to do about Ryan, what do you want from me? What's the price? Because there is always a price. I know there is. I'm not stupid. I'm not Miss Carter. Lena. He folded his hands on the table. He looked, for the first time since she'd met him, tired. Really tired. A man who hadn't slept and wasn't going to pretend about it. The price, as you call it, is 0. That is not a negotiating tactic. That is the whole answer. You owe me nothing. You will not owe me anything. If, in a week, you decide you don't like it here, I will put you in a car with a sum of money that will hold you for a year and a phone number for a woman in Seattle who helps people start over, and you will never hear from me again unless you want to. If, in a month, you decide you want to stay here and never speak to me directly, and have Marguerite bring you your meals and never share a meal with me, that is also acceptable. If in a year you decide you want to have dinner with me, I will have dinner with you. If you never do, I will never ask. That is the whole arrangement. That is the whole of it. Nobody is like that. No. He almost smiled again. The small movement. Not very many are. Then why are you? He was silent for a long time. Because a long time ago, he said finally, a woman asked me for help, and I did not give it. And she is not in the world anymore. And everything I have done since, I have done because I understood too late that the thing I wanted from my life was to have been the kind of man who helped her. I cannot be that man for her. She is not available. She has not been available for a very long time. So I am that man for whoever calls the number instead. That is all. That is the whole of it. There is no hidden chapter, Lena. There is no patient seduction. There is no plan. I do not want your body. I do not want your gratitude. I do not want your love. I do not want you to feel that you owe me a single syllable of your life. I want you to eat breakfast in a house where nobody is going to hit you, and I want you to decide on your own timeline what you are going to do with the rest of your years, and whatever you decide, I want to make it easier." He stopped. He looked down at his hands again. "I am sorry," he said. "That was more than you asked." "No," Lena whispered. "No, it was the right amount." She didn't know what else to say. So she didn't say anything. She just sat there in the long gold stripe of sunlight on the table, across from a man she did not understand, in a kitchen she didn't own, in a house she had never heard of, in a life that was not yet hers but was not his either. It was, for the moment, nobody's. And after 5 years of living inside another man's life, that was the most beautiful thing Lena Carter could imagine. Outside, somewhere past the meadow, a dog barked once. Lena watched the sun move another quarter-inch across the table, and very slowly, without meaning to, without noticing she was doing it, she reached across the wood with her good hand and laid it flat, palm up, in the light. Not reaching for him. Not reaching for anything, just showing her own hand to the sun. Like a woman checking to see if it still worked, Ruth came for her at 11 on the nose. She didn't knock on Lena's door. Lena was already coming down the stairs in borrowed clothes, her mother's cookbook tucked under her good arm the way a child carries a stuffed animal, when Ruth appeared at the bottom of the landing in a dark blue coat and reading glasses pushed up into her hair. "Ready?" "I think so." "You can say no. We can do this tomorrow." "I know. I want to do it today." "Good." Ruth didn't make her talk on the drive. That was the thing about Ruth that Lena was starting to understand. Ruth was not a small-talk woman. Ruth was a woman who, once she was off the clock, would probably talk your ear off about her grandchildren or the tomato blight in her garden. But when Ruth was working, and the working face did not include filling silence. The SUV rolled down the long gravel drive, past the trees, out through the gate, and for the first 10 minutes, Lena just watched the country go by. She had never seen this country in daylight. Last night, it had been a tunnel of rain and headlights. Now it was wide and flat, and huge under a pale blue sky, long fields gone gold with the end of autumn, barbed wire fences, a hawk sitting on a post watching them pass. Somewhere far off, there were the real mountains, big and blue and white-topped, but here, this close to the foothills, everything was just long. "Where are we?" Lena said after a while. "About an hour and a half east of Denver. Little pocket of nothing, on purpose. He bought this place 8 years ago. I think mostly for the privacy." Has he had other women here?" Ruth glanced at her sideways, just once, over the tops of the reading glasses that had slipped down her nose. "A few." "How many?" "Not as many as you'd think. Adrian is picky about when he gets involved in a thing. He doesn't," Ruth hunted for the word, "he doesn't collect people. He's not playing a game where he tries to rack up a score. Each one he takes on all the way. That's expensive, not financially, emotionally. He pays in a currency most men don't know they have. You've worked with him a long time. 16 years come March. How did you meet him?" Ruth's hands tightened on the wheel, just a little, and then relaxed. "He paid for my husband's cancer treatment," she said, matter-of-factly. "My Frank, 20 years ago now. Frank didn't make it anyway. That's how those things go. But I never forgot. And Adrian never mentioned it again, and when I was ready to come back to medicine, I'd taken 6 years off to take care of Frank and then to stop being a person for a while after, I picked up a phone. Adrian had a problem that needed somebody like me. He said so politely in a voicemail. I called him back. That was 16 years ago. What kind of problem? The kind that a woman shows up for. Lena looked out the window. Can I ask you something, and you can tell me if it's not your question to answer? You can always ask. The woman that he didn't help, the one he told me about last night. Ruth was quiet for a long time. They passed a billboard for a rodeo that had happened 3 summers ago. I don't know her name, Ruth said finally. He's never told me. I don't know if anybody still living knows it besides him. I only know she existed, and I only know he blames himself for it, and I only know he has spent his whole adult life paying a debt to a person who can't collect it. I don't know more than that, Lena, and I don't ask. Not because I wouldn't love to know, because some things you let a man keep. That's what I've decided over 16 years. Some things you let a man keep. Lena nodded, slow. Okay. He's a complicated man. I know. He is not a safe man in the way people usually mean safe. He is a safe man in a different way. You'll figure out the difference, eventually. I think I already am. Good. You catch on quick. Ruth glanced at her again. You're going to be okay, kid. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. The clinic was on the second floor of a low brown building on the edge of a town so small Lena missed the sign for it. There was no name on the door. There was a woman at a reception desk who looked up when they came in, smiled at Ruth in a familiar way, and did not ask Lena's name. She buzzed them through a side door, down a short hallway, into an exam room that had been set up already. Lights on, gown folded on the table, X-ray tech in the next room over waiting. They took pictures of Lena's arm. They took pictures of her face. The arm was a clean break of the ulna, a little lower than where Lena had thought it was, and it was going to need to be set properly under real anesthesia. Not surgery, Ruth said, but not the kind of thing you tough out in the hallway with a splint either. They did it at a facility 15 minutes away that afternoon, with a pleasant man in scrubs who counted backward from 10 for Lena and smiled at her as her eyes closed. And when she woke up, her arm was in a proper hard cast from elbow to knuckles, and somebody had put a cup of ice chips next to her bed. The eye was worse than she'd thought. Not bad enough for surgery. The orbital bone had a hairline fracture, but the muscles around the eye were okay, and nothing had slipped where it shouldn't. But the specialist who looked at it, a tall, quiet ophthalmologist named Dr. Park, who Lena had the feeling Ruth had also known a long time, sat down next to her, turned off the bright light, and said carefully, "The eye is fine. The bone will heal. I want you to hear me on the next part. Are you hearing me?" Yes. If he had hit you 2 inches lower, you would have lost vision in this eye. Permanently. Maybe the eye itself. I am telling you this not to scare you. I am telling you this because sometimes when a person is in the shock of it, they do not understand how close they came. I want you to understand how close you came, Lena, not so you are afraid. So that the next time somebody tells you, well, he didn't really mean it, it wasn't really that bad, and somebody at some point will say that to you, because people say that to women like us, you will remember this exam room, and you will remember my face, and you will know. It was that bad. It was always that bad. The fact that you still have both your eyes is luck, nothing more. Lena didn't cry. She had thought she would. She didn't. She just reached out with her good hand and put it on the sleeve of Dr. Park's white coat and squeezed once. "Thank you," she said. Dr. Park covered her hand with her own for a second, then got up, snapped the light back on, and went back to being a doctor. They drove back to the house with Lena's arm in a new cast and her eye patched, and her body running on the last fumes of adrenaline and whatever IV medication they'd given her. The sun was going down over the long, flat fields. Ruth drove with one hand, drinking gas station coffee with the other, humming under her breath to a classical radio station that kept fading in and out. Halfway back, Lena said, "Ruth?" "Yeah." "Is he going to ask me to sleep with him?" Ruth did not flinch. Ruth also did not smile, which Lena appreciated. "No." "How do you know?" "Because I've worked with him for 16 years, and he has never once crossed a line like that with any woman he's helped, including with a woman who 11 years ago told him she would do anything he wanted if he kept helping her daughter, because she thought that was what was being asked. He sat her down on a back porch, and he said, "I remember this, because I was standing in the kitchen and I heard it through the screen door." He said, "Ma'am, if you ever think again that I am a man who would buy help with a woman's body, you have misread me so badly that we cannot work together, and I will have to find you a different person to help you." And then he made her a cup of coffee, and she cried, and he let her. "Oh, Lena." "Yeah. I am telling you this because you need to know, not because I think you're stupid for asking. You're asking the correct question. Every woman he has helped has asked it one way or another, sooner or later. Most of them ask it later. You're asking it on day 2, which tells me something about you." "What does it tell you?" that you're going to be okay faster than most. Lena watched the fields go past. Faster than most is still slow, she said after a minute. Yeah, Ruth said. Yeah, honey, it is. When they got back to the house, Marguerite was waiting on the porch with a cardigan over her shoulders against the evening cold, and she came down the steps before the SUV had fully stopped. She did not fuss. She did not coo. She opened the car door and she said, "Come on, baby, let's get you inside. I've got soup." There was, in fact, soup. There was also, at the table with a glass of water and a book open in front of him, Adrian Voss. He stood up when Lena came in. He did not walk toward her. He did not ask her how it had gone. He looked at her face, at the patch, at the new lines of fatigue, and he said quietly, "You look tired. Eat what you can. Sleep as long as you need." "Did you sleep yet?" "No." "Adrian, I will tonight. Promise." He almost smiled again, the small movement. "I promise," he said. She ate half the soup. Marguerite did not push her to eat more. Lena went upstairs. The bed had been remade with fresh sheets. Somebody had put a small vase of sage on the nightstand and a glass of water, and her mother's cookbook laid flat beside it, already in the place Lena would have put it herself if she'd had the energy to think about it. She was asleep before she finished undressing. Marguerite, coming in later with a glass of warm milk she had known would go undrunk, simply pulled the blanket up over Lena's shoulders and turned off the lamp. That was the second night. The third day was when Jonah Klein came back. He came at lunchtime with a briefcase and a file folder and a small, apologetic face. He ate half a sandwich that Marguerite pressed on him in the kitchen, patted Marguerite on the shoulder in a way that made Marguerite swat at him, and then sat down with Lena and Adrian at the dining table with the sunlight doing the long gold thing again across the wood. "Miss Carter." "Lena." "Lena, how are you feeling?" "Like somebody ran me through a laundromat." "That's honest." "Good. I'll be brief. I know you're tired." Jonah had, he said, spent the last 36 hours doing what Jonah did. He had filed, as promised, a protective order. It had been granted, quickly, by a judge who had seen the photographs Dr. Navarro had taken of Lena's face and arm and had not needed much more convincing. Ryan Hale had been served at 6 that morning. He had been instructed, in language Jonah had drafted personally and which Jonah said he had enjoyed drafting, that he was not to come within 500 feet of Lena, not to contact her through any means, not to contact any member of her family, her workplace, or her acquaintances, and not to discuss her or their relationship on any form of social media or public communication. "He'll break it," Lena said quietly. "He won't be able to help himself." "Almost certainly. That's fine. That's what we want." "That's what you want, Lena." Jonah folded his hands. "Men like Mr. Hale run on two fuels. One is the fear of the people around them. The other is their own sense that the rules do not apply to them. When he breaks the protective order, and I agree with you, he will, we will document each break. We will build a file. That file becomes the spine of everything else we do. The more he breaks it, the stronger our position becomes. His instinct to control you becomes the instrument of his own undoing. Do you follow?" "Yes." "Good. Now, the other matter." Jonah opened the folder. Lena saw, across the table, upside down, her own name typed neatly at the top of several pages, and beside it another name, and another. Her stomach did a small, unhappy flip. "Your marriage," Jonah said. "I need to know some things. Take your time. Tell me what you remember." "We got married in 2020, June." "Where?" "Ridgeview. The courthouse. It was a courthouse wedding. He said he didn't like churches." "Prenuptial agreement?" "No. Joint accounts." "One. Checking. His name was first on it. I don't know if my name is on it anymore. He took me off things, over the years." "Property. The house is in his name, just his. He told me..." She paused. "He told me his dad was a lawyer, and his dad had told him never to put a wife on a deed. His dad wasn't a lawyer. I found that out later. His dad ran a hardware store in Cheyenne." Jonah wrote something down. "Credit cards. I had one. In my name. He canceled it. About 2 years ago. He said I was spending too much. I wasn't. I bought a pair of boots. They cost $60. He canceled the card the next day. I haven't had my own card since. Jonah wrote more. Car. In his name. He told me the insurance was cheaper. It wasn't. I looked once. It would have been $40 a year cheaper to have me on it too. Phone. His plan. Work. I haven't worked in, Lena tried to count, 3.5 years. Ambrose closed in 2022. He wouldn't let me look for another job after that. He said it made him look bad, that his wife worked. Medical insurance. Through him. Have you been to a doctor on your own without him for any reason in the last 5 years? No. Does he have access to your passwords? All of them. Does he monitor your location? Yes, he has an app on my phone. Jonah paused. Lena. Yeah. Where's your phone right now? Lena looked up. It's in my purse, she said. Upstairs. On the chair in the room. I haven't looked at it since. Is it on? I think so. I didn't turn it off. I don't think I... Adrian was already standing up. He was at the bottom of the stairs in 3 steps. He went up them 2 at a time. Lena sat very still at the table, and Jonah sat very still across from her, and the cello music playing softly somewhere in the house was the only sound for maybe 10 seconds. Then Adrian was back, down the stairs slower than he had gone up them, carrying her purse by the strap like it was something that might bite. He set it on the far end of the dining table, as far from Lena as he could, and he said carefully, Lena, is this your bag? Yes. May I take the phone out of it? Yes. He reached in. He pulled out her phone. The screen lit up when he touched it. 27 missed calls, 51 messages, all from Ryan. All from Ryan's number, Ryan's work number, and 3 numbers she didn't recognize, which were almost certainly Ryan borrowing other people's phones. She could see the previews on the lock screen without unlocking it. Where are you, Lena? Lena, come home. Lena, I am not playing. Lena, you will regret this. Lena, I love you. Lena, please. Lena, you stupid fucking... Jonah leaned forward. Has it been on this whole time? I think so. Jonah looked at Adrian. Adrian looked at Jonah. Adrian set the phone, very gently, face down on the table. He knows where this house is, Jonah said. He's known since about 5 in the morning yesterday. The app he had on her phone reports location even when the phone is locked. That's illegal, Lena said stupidly. Many things are illegal, Jonah said. Mr. Hale is not, at present, appearing to care. He stood up. I'm going to step outside and make a phone call. Adrian, a word. They went out onto the back porch. Lena could see them through the kitchen window, 2 silhouettes against the long pink light of the afternoon, Jonah gesturing, Adrian still. She sat at the long dining table and looked at her phone face down on the wood, and she thought about the fact that for 16 hours she had been somewhere Ryan Hale could, technically, find. She did not panic. That surprised her. A year ago, in the hallway of her own house, she had not been able to panic either. She had been too tired, too used up, the fear worn smooth like a river rock. Now the feeling was something different. She sat in the chair. She put her good hand on the table. She waited for the panic. The panic did not come. In its place, there was a very quiet, very cold sentence running on a loop inside her chest. He does not get to do this to me anymore. Just that. Over and over. Steady as a heartbeat. He does not get to do this to me anymore. When Adrian came back in, she was ready. Bouncy, Jonah is making calls, Adrian said. He sat back down across from her. We're going to move you tonight. Different property. Further out. He won't have the address. The phone goes in a box with Jonah, who's going to drive it personally to a location about 2 hours from here and leave it on. We are going to let Mr. Hale come to that location. What he finds there will be a closed gas station and a considerable number of cameras, and a text message from your phone, typed by you if you want, or typed by us if you don't, telling him once and for all that the conversation is over. That is, if you want to send the message at all. You can also simply leave the phone, your choice. She thought about it. I want to type it, she said. Okay. I want to type it myself. I want it in my words. Yes. Will you read it before I send? I want it to be I want it to be what I mean, not what I feel. Those are different things right now. I'm angry. I don't want him to have anything of mine, not even my anger. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Lena Carter, he said. What? You are... He stopped, started again. You are not doing what most people do. On day 3. I want you to know that. You're not doing what most people do. What do most people do? Most people write the angry thing. Is that wrong? No, it's human. It's what I would have done at your age. I wrote worse things, actually, at your age, when I had less excuse. But it is not the strongest move. The strongest move is the one you are making. I wanted you to know you were making it. Okay? I will read anything you write. I will tell you honestly what I think. Then you'll do what you want with it. Okay. She asked for paper. Marguerite brought her a yellow legal pad and a pen. She sat at the table for an hour. She wrote and crossed out. She wrote again. She drank the cup of coffee Marguerite put at her elbow without tasting it. The sun moved another few inches along the wood. Adrian did not watch her. He read Jonah's folder and made his own notes on a different pad, and he let her have the room. Eventually, she put the pen down. She pushed the pad across the table. Adrian picked it up. He read it twice. His face did not change. He set it back down. It's good, is it? It's better than good. It's extremely good, Lena. Are you sure this is what you want to say? Yes. You can write something longer. You've earned longer, if you want longer. No, this is what I want. Okay. She picked up her phone. She held her breath. She turned it over. She did not read the messages. She did not open them. She went straight to the thread with Ryan's name at the top, and she copied what she had written onto the yellow pad, word for word, into the text box. It said, Ryan, I am not coming home. I am not coming back. I am not speaking to you again. Do not call. Do not write. Do not come looking. You do not get the last word. I do. This is it. Lena. She held her thumb over the blue arrow for a second. She pressed it. The message sent. Blue bubble. Delivered. She set the phone face down on the table. She sat back. And she cried quietly for the first time that afternoon because she had not understood, until she pressed send, that she had been waiting her entire marriage to have the last word, and that she had just in 2 sentences taken it. Adrian did not move. Marguerite, from the kitchen doorway where she had been pretending to polish a spoon for the last 10 minutes, came across the room and put a hand on Lena's shoulder. Very light. Grandmother weight. There, Marguerite said. There, baby. That was all. Just there. They moved her that night. The second house was 2.5 hours away in a different direction, in a valley she didn't catch the name of in the dark. It was smaller than the first, older. A real farmhouse from maybe the 1920s. Somebody had renovated it with care but kept the wide plank floors and the old staircase with the worn middle of each step. There was a woman there named Marta, the sister-in-law of a man Adrian had once done a favor for. Lena would learn later, who ran the house and was cheerful in a different way than Marguerite, less quiet, more Polish, always offering people something to drink whether or not they wanted it. Lena settled in. She didn't unpack exactly. She didn't have much to unpack. She set her mother's cookbook on the bedside table in the same position it had been in the other house, and Marta brought her a teacup full of soup that Lena drank half of, and Lena slept. Jonah did his part. He drove the phone to the gas station. He watched from a car half a mile away on a monitor wired to the closed station's cameras. Ryan came. 38 minutes later. Ryan was not subtle. He drove in fast, got out of his truck, paced around the parking lot, tried the doors of the closed building, looked under a dumpster, yelled something at a camera he had noticed. He read the text. He read it again. He read it a third time. Then he threw the phone, Lena's phone, with everything on it, 5 years of photographs she would never see, old voicemails from her dead mother she had never deleted. He threw it across the parking lot, and it hit the asphalt and skidded and stopped in front of a gas pump. And Ryan Hale stood in a closed gas station at 10:30 at night and screamed. The cameras recorded all of it. Jonah drove back and presented a very clean, very high-resolution video package to Adrian over breakfast at the second house 2 mornings later. This, Jonah said, is what I like to call our opening position. Adrian watched 10 seconds of it with no expression on his face. Are there other cameras? He asked. 4, different angles. Audio. Picked up by the camera microphones. Usable. Get it transcribed. Send a copy to Elena. Already done. Good. Lena, who was sitting at the table with a cup of tea she had not yet tasted, said carefully, Who is Elena? A friend, Adrian said. She runs a victims advocacy foundation in Denver. She also, for complicated reasons, has a working relationship with 2 people at the district attorney's office in Ridgeview County. You're already talking to the DA? Not yet. Elena is, on her own. That is how Elena will be able to say later, truthfully, that she brought it to them. Not me. Adrian, yes. You're very good at this. He looked at her over his coffee cup. I have, he said, had a lot of practice, Lena. I'm not proud of the fact that I have had a lot of practice, but I have. Jonah closed the folder. There's something else, Jonah said. It came in this morning. It's the reason I came over instead of calling. Lena, I want you to look at this, but I want to warn you first. It's unpleasant. You have every right to not look at it. I can summarize. Summarize first. Ryan, Jonah said, has been telling people in your neighborhood in Ridgeview that you ran off with another man, that you had been cheating on him for months, that he had forgiven you, begged you to stay, and you had taken his money and disappeared. He is, at the moment, gathering sympathy. Our sources inside his social circle. We have sources inside his social circle. I won't bore you with how. Tell us that he has told this story convincingly enough that 3 of your former neighbors are angry at you, 2 are ambivalent, and 1, thank God, is suspicious. Lena set the tea down. She didn't cry. She didn't feel like crying. She felt instead something cold and specific settling into her chest, the way a stone settles on the bottom of a clear pond. The suspicious one, she said, a Mr. Presley, your neighbor across the driveway. He has apparently known for some time that something was wrong. He has not said so out loud until now, but he told Mrs. Alvarez down the street yesterday afternoon that something about Ryan Hale's story doesn't add up, and he's going to, these are his words, keep his eyes open. Lena put her face in her good hand. Oh, Mr. Presley. You know him. He used to wave at me from his driveway. Ryan would lose his mind. Ryan said he thought Mr. Presley wanted to sleep with me. Mr. Presley is 82 years old. He had a stroke in 2021. He can barely get the paper. He waved at me, Jonah. He just waved at me. Lena. What? Do you want Mr. Presley to know the truth? She looked up. What do you mean? I mean, Jonah said carefully, we can get information to him, quietly, a letter, an account, your words or ours. Enough that he knows his instinct was correct, not enough that he has to do anything with it. You decide. If Mr. Presley knows, then one other person in Ridgeview knows the story was a lie. That is not nothing. I want him to know. Okay. And Mrs. Alvarez. Okay. And the woman who runs the coffee shop at 6th and Bell. She knew me. She knew Ryan. She used to give me the same cup twice sometimes, because Ryan would come in and tell her I hadn't ordered what I ordered, and she would just quietly make me another one and never say anything. I want her to know. Understood. And she stopped. And the waitress. Which waitress? You said there was a waitress. 11 years ago, in Laramie. Jonah went very still. Yes. She's still being talked to. By somebody from Elena's group. Yes. Can I write to her? Jonah looked at Adrian. Adrian looked at Lena. Are you sure? Adrian said. No, I am not, but I keep thinking about her. I keep thinking that she has been carrying this by herself for 11 years. She didn't know there was a me. I didn't know there was a her. I want her to know I believe her, even if she never writes back, even if she tells me to leave her alone and never contact her again. I want her to know there is a woman who came after her who believes her. That's all. That's the whole of what I want. Adrian was quiet for a second. Jonah. Yeah. Help her write it. Yeah. Read it first, both of you. Make sure it doesn't give Ryan's lawyers, if he ever hires any, a handle. Yeah. Lena. What? If she writes back, Adrian said, and I have no way of knowing if she will. But if she does, you may have a friend for the rest of your life. I want you to be ready for that possibility. Good and bad. Some friendships built in that particular dark are very deep. Some are complicated. Both. Whatever it becomes, it will not be small. Okay? Okay. Lena wrote the letter that night. It was 3 paragraphs long. It took her 5 hours. She threw out 9 drafts. The final one started, "My name is Lena Carter. I married Ryan Hale in 2020. I know what he did to you because I know what he did to me. I am writing to tell you that you were not lying, and you were not the first, and you were not the last, and I believe every word you never got to say." She sealed it. She handed it to Jonah. Jonah's eyes, for the first and only time Lena would ever see, got wet. "Miss Carter," he said quietly. "Jonah, you're going to be a very unusual person," he said. "I can feel it coming. I wanted to say that before it was obvious." She laughed. It surprised her. "Thanks, Jonah," she said. That night she slept for 12 hours. The next week she slept 7, most nights. The week after that, 6. Her body was a mess. Her arm itched inside the cast. Her eye turned every color of the rainbow, slowly, in the wrong order. Black and purple first, then green, then yellow, then a weird brown that lingered longest. She did nothing for a while. She did less than nothing. Marta fed her. Ruth drove out twice a week to check her. Adrian came on Sundays, only Sundays, because he had said to her, carefully, one afternoon on the porch, that he did not want to become the rhythm of her life, and that Sundays felt like a rhythm he could stand to be in without replacing the one she was building. She did not know then what to say to that. She said, "Okay." And he said, "Okay." And they did not touch. Not once. In that whole first month after the hallway. Not a hand on a shoulder, not a hand on a back. Adrian Voss did not put a hand on her. Marguerite did. Ruth did. Marta did. Constantly, and without asking, the way European grandmothers do. But Adrian, the man who had knelt in her own hallway and held her hand while the world fell apart. Adrian, from the moment she was safe, never reached for her again. Not until she reached first. He was waiting. She understood that slowly. He was waiting for her to remember that touch could be a thing she gave instead of a thing that was taken. In early December, the DA's office in Ridgeview County, quietly, without a press release, without a public statement, opened a file on Ryan Hale. Not a criminal file. Not yet. An interest file, was how Jonah put it. A file where things could be put. In mid-December, Mr. Presley from across the driveway received, in the mail, a short, unsigned letter in clean-typed print, along with a copy of a medical report and 2 black-and-white photographs. He read the letter sitting at his kitchen table. He read it twice. Then he put on his coat, and he walked across the street, and he knocked on the door of Mrs. Alvarez, and he showed her the letter. And Mrs. Alvarez, who was 77 years old and had buried 2 husbands and was afraid of almost nothing, put her own coat on and walked with Mr. Presley down to 6th and Bell, to the coffee shop, and showed the letter to the woman behind the counter. That woman read it, and her eyes filled, and she said, I knew it, that son of a—" And she made them all 3 coffees on the house, and they sat in a booth for 2 hours while the afternoon light went across the floor. And by the end of the 2 hours, there were 4 people in Ridgeview, Colorado, who knew that Ryan Hale had lied. 4 was not many, but 4 was not 1. 4 was the beginning of a sentence that had never been said out loud about him before. In Laramie, meanwhile, in late December, a 41-year-old teacher named, the name is not ours to give, and Lena would never say it out loud, even years later, in the interviews she eventually, carefully, gave. A 41-year-old teacher opened a letter at her kitchen table. She read it once standing up. She sat down on the floor of her kitchen with her back against the cabinets and read it a second time. Her dog, an old golden, came over and put his head in her lap. She read the letter a 3rd time. Then she got up, shaking, and she got a pen, and she wrote a letter back. It was shorter than Lena's. It said, Lena, I don't know how to thank you for this. I don't think I need to. I have spent 11 years thinking I was crazy. I am not crazy. You are the first person to ever say that to me out loud. I will never forget your name as long as I live. If you ever need anything, ever, if you are ever in a hallway again, please call. I will answer. My number is below. Okay. The letter arrived at the farmhouse on January 4th. Lena read it in the kitchen. She read it twice. And then, for reasons she could not have named at the time, reasons she only understood later, in therapy, in the quiet, she walked out onto the back porch of Adrian Voss's second property, in her wool socks, in the January cold, and she stood under the bare branches of the old oak tree at the edge of the yard, and she said, out loud, to the trees and the fields and the pale flat sky, I'm not alone. 3 words. Small ones. It was the first sentence, the very first sentence, of the rest of her life. The weeks after Ryan signed the papers did not feel, to Lena, like freedom. They felt like weather. That was the only way she could describe it to Dr. Amy Rourke, the therapist she saw twice a week in a small cream-colored office above a bakery in the town of Harpersfield, 30 minutes from the house. Lena would sit on the low gray couch, with a cup of tea going cold in her good hand. Her right arm was out of the cast now, still thin and weak, still aching when the pressure dropped. And she would try to find words for what was happening inside her, and the closest she could get was weather. Weather how? Dr. Rourke asked, the 4th session in. Like, Lena looked out the window. It was January. The sky over Harpersfield was the color of wet concrete. Like I don't get to pick what it's going to be. I wake up and it's one thing. By lunch, it's another thing. I'll be standing at the sink washing a dish, and I'll be fine. I'll be totally fine. And then I'll put the dish down, and I'll be on the kitchen floor, and I don't remember how I got there. I didn't fall. I sat. But I don't remember sitting. Okay. And then an hour later, I'm laughing at something on the radio, like a normal person. And then I'll reach for a cup on a high shelf, and my arm will twinge, and I'll smell him. I'll smell the whiskey. I'll smell his aftershave, that stupid aftershave. And I'm not in the kitchen anymore. I'm back in the hallway. And I can't make it stop. I can't decide what the weather is going to be. Dr. Rourke nodded slowly. She was maybe 40, short brown hair, small silver glasses, and she had a habit of waiting about 3 seconds longer than a normal person would before answering a question. Lena hated it at first. By the 5th session, she had come to understand that those 3 seconds were a gift. That's called trauma, Lena, Dr. Rourke said. That specific thing, the fact that you don't get to pick, the fact that something small, a smell, a sound, a wrong angle of light in a hallway, can take the controls out of your hands. That's the whole signature of the thing. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means your nervous system is doing what your nervous system was built to do, which is protect you. It just hasn't been told yet that the war is over. When does it get told? Slowly, in pieces. By you, by me, by the people around you who don't retrigger it, by the 1,000 mornings in a row where nothing bad happens. That's the medicine. I wish I had a faster one. Me too. I know. Lena went back to the house after every session and slept for 2 hours. She didn't know why. Dr. Rourke said that was normal too. The body apparently was doing work. The house itself had slowly stopped being a place and started being a life. It was the staff, more than anything. Marguerite, who ran the kitchen and the schedule and most of the opinions in the house, had stopped asking Lena what she wanted to eat and started just putting plates in front of her. Small, warm things. Nothing fancy. Nothing Lena had to make a decision about, which was, Lena realized, exactly the point. Marguerite had figured out, somewhere in the first week, that Lena had lost the muscle for deciding things. She had spent 5 years having dinner chosen for her, approved for her, criticized for her. The idea of standing in front of a menu and picking was, for reasons Lena couldn't explain even to herself, so overwhelming that it could ruin an afternoon. So Marguerite just cooked and set the plate down, and Lena ate. And slowly, in small, invisible increments, Lena's body remembered that food was allowed. There was Mateo, the man who tended the grounds, and the small greenhouse out behind the pond. He was in his 60s, barrel-chested, spoke English with a soft Guatemalan lilt, and had the good sense to treat Lena like a person he'd known for 20 years instead of a woman who had shown up at the house on a stretcher. The second week she was there, he found her sitting on the back step watching him prune something in a hard freeze. And without saying a word, he handed her a pair of gloves and a pair of shears and pointed at a bush. She pruned for 2 hours. She didn't cry once. That night she slept 6 hours straight for the first time since the hallway. The next morning she went out looking for Mateo before breakfast. "What else?" she said. He'd raised one eyebrow. "Más trabajo, señora." More work, yes. So she learned the greenhouse. She learned which tomatoes liked which light, and how to pinch a basil plant so it got bushy instead of leggy, and what a tool called a hori-hori was, and why Mateo loved his so much, he'd named it. She was no good at any of it at first. Her right hand still cramped. She dropped things. She killed a rosemary plant by overwatering it and cried for 45 minutes in the greenhouse at 3 in the afternoon because a plant had died because of her, and she had been trying so hard not to let anything die because of her. Mateo found her there. He didn't fuss. He just sat down on an overturned bucket next to her and said, "Señora, the first rosemary is always a sacrifice. This is known." "You just made that up." "Si, but it is still true." She laughed. Her face was a wet mess, and she laughed. And it was the first real laugh. Not a polite laugh, not a nervous laugh, a real one from her stomach, that she'd had since she left the hallway. Mateo pretended not to notice. That was his gift. She was starting to understand. None of them pretended nothing was wrong. They just pretended not to watch. Adrian Voss was barely at the house those first weeks. He came in for dinner maybe twice a week. He stayed the night maybe once. Otherwise, he was somewhere, a place called the office, which Lena slowly understood was not a single office, but a constellation of them in 3 cities, doing whatever it was a man like Adrian Voss did during the day. He never said. She never asked. When he was there, he ate at the dining table with her if she wanted company and took a plate to the study if she didn't. He was the one who taught her how to tell him no, actually. The first time he came home and she had already eaten alone and didn't want to sit with him, he'd simply said, "Understood. Good night, Lena," and taken his soup to the study. No sigh, no comment, no slight pulling of the mouth. The next morning at breakfast, he was exactly the same as he had been 2 days before. Like nothing had happened. Like nothing needed to happen. It took her about 4 of these nights to realize what he was doing. He was letting her practice. He was letting her practice saying no to a man and having the sky not fall. The night she figured that out, she couldn't sleep. She sat on the window seat in her bedroom for an hour looking out at the dark meadow, and finally she went downstairs in her socks and knocked on the study door. "Come in." He was at the desk, reading glasses on, a stack of paper in front of him. The fire in the stone fireplace was almost out. "Lena, She hovered in the doorway. Her hand was still on the knob. "I figured out what you've been doing. With the dinners." He set the pen down. And I want to say thank you." He looked at her over the glasses. His eyes were gray. She'd never really noticed that before. Gray with a little green in them. "You don't have to. I know I don't have to. That's why I'm doing it." He almost smiled, the small movement of the mouth. "You're welcome," he said. She stood there another moment. She didn't know why. There was nothing else to say. She just didn't want to leave yet. "Would you like to sit?" he said, reading her. "For a minute. If I'm not, you're not." She sat down in the leather chair across from the desk. The fire popped. He went back to reading. She went back to staring at the fire. Neither of them said anything for maybe 10 minutes, and it was the most peaceful 10 minutes Lena had had in her adult life. When she finally got up, he didn't look up from his papers. "Good night, Lena." "Good night, Adrian." She was halfway up the stairs when she realized that was the first time she had called him by his first name without him asking her to. The legal side of things, meanwhile, kept working in the background like a machine in a basement. Jonah Klein sent updates. He sent them in short, clean emails to an account Lena had not known she had until Jonah opened it for her. He copied Adrian on everything. He copied nobody else. The updates were careful and dry and never full of detail, but a picture emerged over the weeks. Ryan had not been charged criminally. That had been Lena's call. She had chosen option 1, with modifications, because she was not ready to sit in a courtroom, and Dr. Rourke had said very gently that if she pressed charges before she was ready, the trial would hurt her worse than the hallway had. Lena had taken a week with it. She had looked at Jonah's face over a conference table, and she had said, "Not now, maybe later, but not now." Jonah had nodded. "That is a decision you are allowed to unmake at any time. The statute of limitations on what he did to you in Colorado is 8 years. You have time." Okay. And in the meantime, he'd added, mild as milk, Mr. Voss has asked me to make sure that Mr. Hale's current life becomes, shall we say, inhospitable. She had looked at Adrian, who had been sitting very still at the other end of the table. He had met her eyes. You said you wouldn't do anything I hadn't agreed to. I haven't. Jonah is asking. What does inhospitable mean? Jonah had slid a single piece of paper across to her. On it was a list. Ryan's bar, Miller's, had been co-owned on paper with a man named Doug Miller, a silent partner who had put up most of the initial money and taken a quiet cut for 11 years. Doug Miller, it turned out, had a number of loans outstanding with a commercial lender based in Denver. That commercial lender, it further turned out, was about to be acquired by a holding company with a very quiet and very patient board. That holding company, Jonah said, was prepared to call in Doug Miller's loans on 30 days' notice, entirely within its legal rights. And Doug Miller was prepared, in exchange for the loans being restructured instead, to terminate his partnership with Ryan Hale and sell his share to a new LLC, which would then immediately fire Ryan from the bar he had co-owned for a decade. The house on Birchwood was in Ryan's name, but Ryan had borrowed against it 2 years ago for a boat he didn't need, through a small local bank. That bank, Jonah said, had already been contacted. The note was being called. Ryan had 90 days to pay it or lose the house. Ryan did not have 90 days' worth of money. Ryan's truck was financed. The financing was through a dealership that did a lot of business with one of Adrian's portfolio companies. The financing was, Jonah said, being reviewed for irregularities. Ryan's credit cards, 3 of them, all maxed, had been flagged for the sort of enhanced scrutiny that very rapidly became a frozen account. Ryan had a cousin in Pueblo who owned a roofing company. The cousin had been going to offer Ryan a job. The cousin had received a phone call from somebody nobody in the cousin's family had ever met and was now no longer going to offer Ryan a job. And this was the last item on the list, and the one that made Lena's stomach turn sideways in a way she couldn't name. Ryan Hale had, 11 years ago, when he was still a young man, been involved in an incident at a bar in Laramie, Wyoming, in which a waitress had left in an ambulance, and Ryan had left with a warning because the waitress had declined, the next morning, to press charges. That waitress, Jonah said mildly, had been located. She was now 41 years old. She lived in Oregon. She was a teacher. She had, when contacted by a woman from a victims advocacy group that Adrian's office quietly funded, cried for 20 minutes on the phone and then said, very clearly, if you're telling me he is doing it again to somebody else, then yes. Yes, I will say what happened. I have been waiting 11 years for somebody to ask me what happened. Lena read the list twice, then she set it down. Then she put her good hand over her mouth. Jesus, she whispered. I know, Jonah said very gently. He told me about her, the waitress. He told me she was lying. He told me she was a bitch who wanted money. He told me, I know. There are others, Jonah, Adrian, there are others. There almost always are, Jonah said. I'm sorry to tell you that, but there almost always are. Adrian hadn't said anything yet. Lena looked at him. This is option 1, he said, with modifications. What are the modifications? You tell me. She sat very still for a long time. The waitress, she said finally. In Oregon. Yes. If she wants to go on record. Not for court. Just on record. In a place that means something. Then I want my statement added to hers. Understood. I don't want to press charges yet. I'm not ready yet. But I want it to exist. I want if he ever does this again, I want the next woman not to be the first one on paper. I want her to be the 4th or the 5th. I want it to be a pattern when they find her. Understood. And I want him out of the state. That is being arranged. And I want him to know. She stopped. Her voice shook. I want him to know who did it. I want him to know the call got made. I don't want him to get to tell himself for the rest of his life that his life fell apart because of bad luck. I want him to know it was me. The number was mine. The phone call was mine. The woman was mine. I was always mine. I was never his. She hadn't known she was going to say it until she said it. She was half out of her chair by the end. Her good hand was shaking on the edge of the table. Jonah wrote something down. Adrian watched her. His face did not change, but something in his shoulders did, just slightly. A softening. A man seeing something he had been waiting to see. That, he said, can be arranged as well. She sat down. She wiped her face on her sleeve. Then do it, she said. All of it. Option 1 with those modifications. Close him down. Push him out. Put him on a page somewhere with the waitress from Laramie. And send him a message, from me, that he will understand. What should the message say? Jonah asked. Lena thought about it for a long time. Nothing, she said finally. Don't send words. Send a copy of my signed statement. That's the message. Let him read it. Let him understand who wrote it. Don't give him anything else to argue with. Jonah had almost smiled. Miss Carter, he said, it has been a pleasure working for you. That was in late January. By mid-February, Ryan Hale no longer owned a bar, no longer owned a house, no longer owned a truck, no longer had working credit, and had moved in with his sister in Grand Junction, who did not want him there and said so loudly. By the end of February, he had moved again to a motel in western Nevada, paying week to week. He had tried to call Lena's old number twice. The old number no longer existed. He had tried, through a third party, to reach her sister Danielle. Danielle, after the fourth attempt, had changed her number. Danielle. That was the other thing that happened in those weeks. Lena had made the call from the window seat in her bedroom on a Tuesday morning, 4 days after the first therapy session. She had held the phone for 40 minutes before she dialed. She had almost put it down twice. When Danielle picked up, Lena couldn't talk. Hello? Hello? Who? Danny. There was a silence on the other end of the line that had a whole marriage in it. A whole decade of Christmases Lena hadn't come to. A whole long season of voicemails Danny had left and then stopped leaving. Lena. Danny, oh my God. Danny. Oh my God, Lena. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm safe. Where are you? I'm in Colorado, but not there anymore. I'm somewhere else. I left, Danny. Danielle started crying. Danielle, who had been the tough one their whole childhood, the one who had punched a boy in the face in 6th grade for calling Lena Fat Girl Carter on the bus, the one who had not cried at their mother's funeral because somebody had to hold Lena up, that Danielle was crying on the other end of the phone in a way Lena had never heard her cry before. I thought, Danielle said. Lena, I thought you were, I know. Every year, every Christmas, I kept thinking I was going to get a call, that somebody was going to call me and tell me, I know, Danny, I'm so sorry. Don't you dare apologize to me. Danny, don't you dare. They talked for 3 hours. Lena told her almost everything, not the hallway, not yet, but the frame of it, the 5 years, the shrinking, the isolating, the phone calls that had stopped because Ryan had made them stop. The Christmas in 2022 when Lena had told Danny on the phone that she just didn't feel like flying, and Danny had known, in her bones, that Lena was lying, and Danny had not pushed hard enough. And Danny had spent 3 years hating herself for not pushing hard enough. Stop that, Lena said. Danny, stop. You don't get to do that. He would have cut you off anyway. He would have cut everybody off. That was what he was for. You couldn't have known. I should have. You did. You told me at the wedding. You told me he wasn't right. I chose not to hear you. Lena? I chose not to hear you, Danny. I get to say that. I don't get to say a lot of things yet, but I get to say that one. Danny was quiet for a long time on the other end. Who got you out? She asked, finally. Lena looked at the ceiling of her bedroom in the house in the meadow. A man I waited on once at a restaurant, she said, 3 years ago. He gave me a card. I kept it. I don't know why I kept it. I called him. He came. A man you waited on. Yes. Lena. I know how it sounds. Lena, is he? He's not, Lena said. He isn't like that. Danny, I don't know how to explain him. He's complicated. He's not a good man the way you mean good. But he is, so far, the thing he says he is. And the thing he says he is somebody who got me out and is letting me decide what comes next. That's all. That's the whole of it so far. Are you in love with him? No. Are you going to be? Danny? I'm asking. I don't know, Lena said honestly. I don't know what I'm going to be. I don't know who I am yet. I have to find that out first before I know what I want to do with her. Danny was quiet. That's the smartest thing you've ever said, she said, finally. I know. I'm going to come see you. Not yet. Lena, Danny, not yet. I want to see you. I want to see you so bad, but I'm not together yet. I don't want you to come and see me not together. I want you to come and see me when there's a me here for you to see, okay? Give me a month. Give me 2. I'll tell you when. 2 months, Danny said, and then I'm coming whether you tell me to or not. Okay? Lena? Yeah. Don't you ever disappear on me again. I won't. Swear. I swear. On Mama. Lena's throat closed. On Mama, she whispered. She hung up the phone, and she lay down on the window seat, and she cried for an hour the way people cry when a muscle they didn't know they'd been clenching finally lets go. By March, she was sleeping through most nights. By late March, she was driving. Dr. Rourke had encouraged it, a small step, a controlled one. Lena had not been behind the wheel of a car in 4 years, because Ryan had preferred to drive her places. The first time she took one of the house cars out of the garage, a little gray sedan that Marguerite used for errands, she drove in slow circles around the long gravel drive for 40 minutes, palms sweating, heart pounding, before she made it out to the county road. The second day, she made it to the gas station. The third day, she made it to Harpersfield. The fourth day, she sat in the parking lot of a small hardware store in Harpersfield for 20 minutes, trying to make herself go inside. And when she finally did, she bought, just for herself, with her own debit card on her own account, the account Jonah had helped her open in her own name, with her own signature, a small terracotta pot, a bag of potting soil, and a single tomato seedling. She carried it out to the car. She set it on the passenger seat. She looked at it for a long time. Then she laughed out loud, alone in a parking lot in a small Colorado town, because she had just realized that this was the first thing she had chosen for herself in 5.5 years. Not the big choices. Not leaving. Not staying. Not Adrian. A tomato. A $12 tomato seedling that nobody on earth had told her to buy or not buy. She drove home with the windows down. It was cold. She didn't care. She named the tomato Francis after her mother. She told Mateo. Mateo thought this was an excellent name for a tomato, and he set Francis up with her own spot in the greenhouse and declared, with great seriousness, that Francis was going to be the best tomato of this year. Senora, you will see. She did see. In June, Francis produced 17 tomatoes, but that was still 3 months away. Between the tomato and June, a lot happened. In April, Lena moved out of the main house. Adrian had offered, carefully, to rent her a place in Harpersfield, or to buy her a place, or to continue letting her stay in the main house for as long as she wanted, or to put her up in a hotel in Denver if she wanted to live in a city, or any combination she could think of. He had offered all of them in the same tone, which was the tone of a man who did not have a preferred outcome. Lena had surprised herself. She had chosen the small cottage on the property. It had been the caretaker's house once, 50 years ago, before the house had stopped needing a caretaker. It was 2 rooms and a kitchen and a tiny sunroom, and it was about 400 yards from the main house, down a path through the trees, and she had walked into it on a cold morning in early April and known, the way you know things in your stomach, this. This, she said. This, Adrian agreed. Not the main house. Not a place in town. Not this. Because it's mine. Because it will be yours. Yes, if you want it. How much? You don't. How much, Adrian? He had looked at her for a long moment. $1 a year, he said. On a 99-year lease. Signed to you alone. Non-transferable except by you. That is the number I will agree to. That is the number I am willing to put in writing. You will not talk me higher. Before you try. That's not fair market. Miss Carter. Lena. At some point, you are going to have to let me do something for you that isn't mathematically even. I know you don't like it. I know why you don't like it. Let me have this one. $1. $1. Paid annually. I will cash the check every December. Frame it if I'm feeling sentimental. She had almost cried, which he pretended not to see. She moved in 3 weeks later. Marguerite helped her. Matteo helped her. Danielle, who did come in mid-April and stayed for 9 days, and cried a lot and laughed a lot, and drank too much wine with Lena on the cottage porch one night and told her every terrible thing Danny had ever thought about Ryan Hale in a long, uninterrupted monologue that lasted 45 minutes. Helped her hang curtains in the sunroom. "This place," Danny said, sitting on the porch steps on her last night, watching the sun go down over the meadow. "Lena, this place. I know. You landed soft, honey. I know. The man who owns it. Danny? I'm not asking, I'm just saying, the man who owns it, Lena. I know. Is he around a lot? He comes for dinner sometimes. He doesn't come here. He doesn't come to the cottage. He hasn't been inside the cottage. He waits at the end of the path if he's walking me back. He waits outside the door if he's picking me up for something. He doesn't cross the line unless I open it." Danny looked at her for a long moment. "Lena. Yeah. That's not normal. I know. Men don't do that. I know. Why does he do that?" Lena took a long breath. "Because he's trying to unbreak me," she said. "And he knows, he figured out a long time ago with somebody else, that if he pushes, he breaks me worse. So he doesn't push. That's the whole of it. That's the whole of him. He doesn't push. And you. And me what? What are you doing?" Lena watched the sun drop the last inch behind the trees. "I'm growing a tomato," she said. Danny laughed. It was a real laugh. A Danny laugh. "Lena Carter," she said. "Look at you. Look at me," Lena said quietly to the darkening meadow. "Just look at me." By May, Lena had a part-time job. She had not needed the money. Adrian had made sure of that, in a way that involved trusts and accounts, and words Jonah used that Lena did not entirely understand, but that meant, at the bottom of it, that she was never going to have to decide whether to eat or pay the electric bill again. She had, at first, hated that. She had told Dr. Rourke that she hated it. Dr. Rourke had listened and nodded and then said carefully, "Lena, is the money what you hate? Or is it the fact that you don't know yet who you are if you don't have to be afraid about money?" Lena had not answered for a long time. "The second one," she had said finally. "Yes. Shit. Yes." So Lena had taken the job on purpose. Not because she needed the money, because she needed to know what she did with a day when nobody required anything of her. She had walked into the little branch library in Harpersfield one morning and told the head librarian, a woman named Phyllis with bifocals on a chain, that she would like to volunteer. Phyllis had looked at her over the bifocals. "Volunteer for what, honey?" "Anything." "That's not how volunteering works." "It is today," Lena had said. Phyllis had laughed. Phyllis had liked her. Phyllis had started her at 8 hours a week, shelving returns, and within 3 weeks Phyllis had promoted her, Phyllis's word, to 15 hours a week and given her a small desk at the back of the children's section where Lena did inventory on the early readers, and once a week on Thursday afternoons ran a story time for the 3 and 4-year-olds of Harpersfield. The first Thursday, Lena had thrown up twice before going in. The second Thursday, she had only thrown up once. By the fourth Thursday, she had stopped throwing up entirely. And by the sixth Thursday, she had a regular audience of 11 small children who called her Miss Lena and sat in a circle on a threadbare rug and looked at her with absolute undivided attention for 40 minutes every week. And Lena, standing in front of them with a picture book in her hands, understood, somewhere around the middle of a book about a mouse who lost a button, that she had not been looked at like that by anyone in a very long time. She was crying by the end of the book. The children thought she was crying because of the mouse, which was sad in a couple of places, and several of them came up and patted her knees. And one of them, a very serious little girl named Juno, 4 years old, missing a front tooth, climbed into her lap without asking. "It's okay, Miss Lena," Juno said, with enormous authority. "He finds the button, at the end." "I know, baby," Lena said, "so you don't have to cry." "I know, but if you have to, you can," Juno said after a moment's thought. "My mom says it's okay to cry if you have to." "Your mom sounds smart." "She is," Juno said. "She's the smartest in our whole house." Lena walked to her car after story time and sat in the driver's seat for 20 minutes before she could drive. She didn't tell Adrian about story time for almost a month. She didn't know why. Maybe because it was hers. Maybe because she wanted one thing that was hers before she showed it to anyone. When she finally did tell him, one evening over dinner at the cottage, he had walked down the path with a bottle of wine and a bag of groceries because she had invited him, on purpose, for the first time, and she had cooked for him out of her mother's cookbook. He had listened to the whole story about Juno and the button and the mouse without saying a word, and when she was finished, he had set his fork down and looked at her for a long moment and said very quietly, "Lena, yeah, you're going to be all right. I know. I mean it. I'm not saying it to be kind. I'm telling you what I see. I know, Adrian. You're going to be better than all right. Don't make me cry. I'm not trying to. I know." She put her good hand on the table, palm up, in the light from the lamp. And after a moment, Adrian Voss, who had, in 5 months, never once reached for her without being asked, laid his hand flat on the table, beside hers, a clean inch of wood between them. Not touching, just near. She looked at the space between their hands, and very slowly for the first time she closed it. It was only his hand. It was only warm skin. It was only a Tuesday in May, in a small kitchen, in a cottage at the end of a path through the trees, and outside the sunroom, Frances the tomato was putting out her first yellow flower. And somewhere 400 miles west in a motel in Nevada, Ryan Hale was watching television with the sound off because he could no longer afford the service. And none of that was the point. The point was her hand, and his hand, and her choosing it. She didn't say anything. He didn't say anything. They finished dinner with their hands touching on the table like two quiet animals that had decided at the same moment that they were safe. When he left that night, he walked himself to the door. She stood on the porch and watched him go down the path. He turned once at the bend and raised a hand. She raised hers back. Then she went inside. She closed the door behind her. She locked it because she still locked it every night and probably would for the rest of her life. But she locked it from the inside of a house that was hers, in a nightgown she had bought herself, after a dinner she had cooked herself for a man she had invited herself. And when she turned off the kitchen light and stood for a moment in the dark, she realized that for the first time in 5.5 years, she was not afraid of the silence in her own home. She was in it. She was in the silence, and the silence was hers, and nothing in it was going to hurt her. She stood there a long time in the dark, and then, softly, to no one, to the dark itself, she said her own name out loud, Lena Carter. The house did not answer. The house didn't have to. She went upstairs, and she went to bed, and she slept, deeply and quietly, until morning. Summer came to the meadow slow, the way summer always did there. The grass turned that particular shade of late June gold. The cottonwoods by the pond shook in their long silver way whenever the wind moved through them. Frances the tomato produced her 17th fruit, and Mateo, who had been waiting all spring to be right, picked it with ceremony and presented it to Lena on a plate, sliced, with a pinch of sea salt, and announced that she was now, officially, una campesina. Lena ate a slice standing in the greenhouse doorway in her bare feet. It tasted like a tomato. It tasted like something she had made. It tasted like a summer she was actually inside of, instead of watching from a locked bathroom. She thought, standing there with warm juice on her chin, that if anyone had told her on the night of the hallway, 1 year and 2 months ago, almost exactly to the day, that she would be here, in a greenhouse, in a sundress she had bought for herself, eating a tomato named after her dead mother, she would not have believed them. She would not have been able to imagine it. She had not possessed the equipment that night to imagine a future at all. That was the thing she wanted people to understand. That was what she found herself trying to explain later to the women in the circle. Let's go back to the circle. The circle started in July. It started because of a woman named Teresa Blake, who walked into the Harpersfield Library on a Thursday afternoon with a black eye she had tried very hard to cover with concealer, and sat down in the back of story time with a little boy of about 3 on her lap. She didn't make eye contact with Lena. She didn't pretend to enjoy the book. She just sat there, holding her son, and halfway through the second book, Lena would remember this forever. It was a book about a rabbit who couldn't find his way home. Teresa Blake started crying without any sound, the way women cry when they have been trained not to be heard. Lena finished the book. She did head, shoulders, knees, and toes with the kids because that was how she always ended story time. She hugged Juno goodbye. She thanked the parents. She watched the room empty out. Teresa Blake sat there. Her boy had fallen asleep against her chest. Lena walked over. She didn't sit too close. She didn't touch her. She sat down on a child-sized chair 2 feet away and rested her forearms on her knees and waited. "Hi," she said finally. "Hi. I'm Lena. I know. I've been coming for 3 weeks. I'm Teresa." "It's nice to meet you, Teresa." Teresa didn't answer. "Is he your only one?" Lena asked. "Yes." "He's beautiful. What's his name?" "Caleb." "Hi, Caleb," Lena whispered to the sleeping child, and Teresa made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob and dropped her chin to the top of her son's head. "I'm sorry," Teresa said. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm sorry, I should go." Teresa. "What? You don't have to go. You don't have to explain anything. You don't have to tell me anything. You don't have to do anything. You can just sit here in the back of the children's section for as long as you want. Nobody is going to ask you to leave, I promise." Teresa looked at her for the first time, really looked, and Lena watched her face go through the long, familiar dance. The reading of Lena's face, the search for whether this woman was going to be safe, the math of how much to trust, how much to show, how much to keep behind the concealer. Lena knew the dance. She had danced the dance. "You have," Teresa said. "You have a—" "I do," Lena said. "Not anymore. But I did." "How long?" 5.5 years. "How did you—" "I left." "How?" Lena took a long breath. "I had a business card in my purse," she said, "from a man who had been kind to me one time. I kept it. For 3 years I kept it. I hid it from my husband. I didn't tell anybody I had it. I almost threw it away twice. And then one night things got very bad and I called the number and the man who answered the phone got me out." Teresa stared at her. "A man got you out?" "Yes." What did he want?" "Nothing. Nobody does that." "He does." I don't believe you." "That's all right. I wouldn't have believed me either a year ago. I'm not telling you because I want you to believe me about him. I'm telling you because I want you to believe me about you." Teresa's mouth trembled. "I don't—" "Teresa, you can leave. It's possible. I know it doesn't feel possible. I know it feels like there is no door. I know it feels like the only door leads somewhere worse than the room you're in. But there is a door, I promise you. I promise you. I don't have money. Okay. I don't have family clothes. My mom's in Arizona. I can't drive there with him. He'd find me. He's got a guy who works at the phone place. Okay. I don't have— Teresa. What? Can I give you a number? What? A phone number, not mine. Well, mine too if you want it. But another one. A woman in Denver. Her name is Elena. She runs a house. It's very quiet. It's very safe. Nobody knows about it except the people who need to. If you call her, she will meet you somewhere public, in the daytime, with her own child, so he won't be suspicious. She will help you figure out what comes next. She will not tell you what to do. She will not tell you when to leave. She will just be there when you are ready. How do you know her? I helped fund her house. Teresa blinked. You what? I helped fund it, Lena said. It's a long story, but yes, I know her. I trust her. She helped me a little last year. Now I help her. A little. A woman who helped me gave me a number, and now I am giving you a number. That is how this works. That is how this has always worked. Teresa started crying again, silent, shoulders shaking. Lena got up, very slowly, and got a scrap of scratch paper from the reference desk and a pencil, and wrote Elena's number on it. Underneath, she wrote her own. Underneath that, she wrote, "You are not crazy, you are not weak, you are not stuck. Call whenever you're ready, even if ready is 3 years from now. Lena." She folded the paper very small and slid it across to Teresa's open palm. "Put it in your shoe," she said. "What?" "In your shoe. Not in your pocket. Not in your purse. He'll check those. Put it in your shoe." Under the insole, if it has one. If he ever finds it, say, you found it on the floor and we're going to throw it away. Can you remember that? Yes. Say it back. Under the insole. If he finds it, I've found it on the floor. Good girl. Teresa looked up. She had heard it the way Lena had heard it 15 months ago in a hallway. Not as a leash, as a blessing. Her face broke. Lena, I know. Lena, I can't. You don't have to do anything today, Lena said. You already did the thing. You already came in here. You already sat down. You already let me see you. That was the hard part. That's already behind you. Teresa nodded and nodded and nodded, and she got up carefully with her sleeping boy, and she walked out of the library with a scrap of paper tucked into her left sneaker, and Lena stood in the children's section and watched her go with her whole chest hurting. Phyllis, behind the desk, had been pretending not to watch. You want to tell me what that was, honey? Phyllis said quietly when Teresa was gone. Not really, Lena said. Fair enough. Phyllis. Yeah, if she comes back? If she comes back and she asks for me and I'm not here, I know. Phyllis, you don't? Honey. Phyllis took her bifocals off. She set them on the desk. She looked at Lena with a face that had been around for 62 years. I know what that was. I've been working at libraries since before you were born. I have seen that exact conversation at that exact table with that exact little boy asleep on his mama, more times than I can count. You don't have to tell me what that was. If she comes in here looking for you, I will sit her down in the back office with a cup of coffee, and I will call you, and I will not let her leave until you get here. You do not have to explain this to me. Lena's eyes filled. Phyllis, go shelve the returns, honey, before I cry at my own desk. Lena went and shelved the returns. Teresa called her on a Saturday morning in late July at 6:14 a.m. She was in the parking lot of a truck stop in Lyman. She had Caleb in the back seat. She had 2 garbage bags of clothes. She had no wallet because her wallet had been in the house, and her husband had taken it 2 days ago during the kind of fight that did not leave marks in places anybody else would see. She had $41 in cash that her mother had sent her last Christmas in a card, and she had kept hidden, for 7 months, inside the binding of a cookbook. That last detail undid Lena. Inside a cookbook. I'm coming to get you, Lena said into the phone, sitting up in bed. Stay where you are. Stay in the car. Lock the doors. I'm an hour and a half out. I'm coming. She drove the gray sedan. She drove it herself. She did not ask Adrian. She did not ask Hector. She did call Jonah on the road and tell him what was happening because Jonah was going to need to know this was a woman crossing state lines with a 3-year-old and no custody paperwork, and Jonah was going to need to start doing the things Jonah did so that nothing about Teresa's path into safety could be used later to drag her back out of it. I'll have somebody meet you at the house with the emergency packet, Jonah said. Elena has a bed for them. Dr. Navarro is available if the boy needs to be seen. Thank you. Lena. Yeah. This is the 4th one. I know. In 5 months. I know. Just noting it. Noted. You doing okay? Yeah, I am actually. Good. Drive safe. She drove safe. She got to the truck stop at 7:51 a.m. Teresa was in the car with Caleb. Teresa had not slept. Teresa had a fresh bruise on her neck that had not been there 3 weeks ago in the library. Caleb was eating a granola bar from the glove compartment and was very solemnly informing Lena through the window that his mommy had said they were going on an adventure. That's right, buddy, Lena said. A big one. Are there bears? Caleb asked. No bears. Good, Caleb said. I don't like bears. Teresa started crying. Lena got in the driver's seat of Teresa's car, a 14-year-old Toyota with 200,000 miles on it, and a check engine light that had been on for so long Teresa had forgotten it was on. And she drove the whole family home. Home. That was what she had started calling it, around the 5th woman. The first 3 she had mostly just connected to Elena's house in Denver. The 4th one, a woman named Kelly from Cheyenne, who had shown up at story time because her cousin in Harpersfield had whispered, "There's a lady at the library. Go see the lady at the library," had needed more than Elena. Kelly had needed a place that was not a shelter because Kelly was on the verge of going back. That was the thing nobody understood if they hadn't lived it. how easy going back was, how the pull of the known thing was almost always stronger than the pull of the unknown, safer thing. Kelly had needed stillness. She had needed to sit in a room where nobody was going to arrive. Lena had put Kelly in the main house. She hadn't asked Adrian. She had just done it. She had walked into the study that night and said, "I put a woman and her daughter in the east bedroom. She needs a month, maybe 2. Is that all right?" And Adrian had looked up from his papers and said, "Of course." And that was that. And Kelly had stayed 6 weeks. And on the day Kelly had left for her aunt's house in Iowa, she had hugged Lena on the front steps and said, "You know what you are, right? You know what this is." "It's just a house," Lena had said. "No, it isn't," Kelly had said. By August, there was a name for it. Lena didn't invent the name. Marguerite did, mostly as a joke, the night Marguerite was cooking for 9 people at once. "Well," Marguerite had said, muttering over the stove, "welcome to the inn." The inn. It stuck. They did not advertise. They did not have a website. They did not have a sign. The women came the way Teresa had come, whispered from a cousin, passed in a hallway, slipped inside a shoe. Lena took them one at a time. She kept the numbers small. She had learned from Dr. Rourke that she could not save everybody, and she had learned from herself that trying to was its own kind of running. So she ran a library story time on Thursday afternoons, and she grew tomatoes with Mateo, and she drove the meadow road to town and back, and she took in a woman at a time, and she watched the summer lean, slowly, into the fall. Adrian watched her do it from a careful distance. That was how he did everything. He watched from a careful distance. When she had put Kelly in the east bedroom without asking, she had expected, in the part of her that had lived with Ryan, some small punishment for it. A pulled mouth, a sigh, a sentence that sounded neutral and meant something else. Adrian had not given her any of that. Adrian had instead quietly had Jonah set up a small LLC registered in Lena's name with Lena as the sole signatory, funded with an amount of money Lena had refused to look at because looking at it made her hands shake. "For the inn," Jonah's email had said, "for whatever the inn needs. Funded. No strings. Signed Jonah. CC? Adrian. I don't want it," Lena said at dinner that night. "Okay," Adrian said. You can't just fund something and put my name on it." "I didn't. Jonah did. I told Jonah what you were doing. Jonah put the structure together. The money is..." He paused. "The money is a portion of the proceeds from the sale of a thing I sold in May. I needed to do something with it. I did that. If you don't want it, you don't have to spend it. It will sit in the account. It will sit there for 30 years if it has to." Adrian. "Lena, this is too much. It's a fund for other women. It's not for you." "You know what I mean?" "I do. But I'm asking you to consider something." "What?" He set his fork down. He looked at her very directly. "I have spent 14 years," he said, "doing what I did for you, one woman at a time, through people I hired, through houses I kept. I have been a man writing checks to fix a problem that does not get fixed by checks. Do you understand? I have done some good. I have done some. But I have always been the wrong person to be doing it. I am a man. I am rich. I am scary to people who have been hurt by men with money. I can open doors. I can close ones. But I am not the person the women in the truck stop parking lots want to see get out of the car. Are you following me?" "Joey, yes. You are that person. You know the hallway. You have been on the tile. You know what she needs to hear and when she needs to hear it, and you know what question not to ask. I cannot do what you did with Teresa on Thursday afternoon. I cannot do what you did with Kelly in the east bedroom. I have tried, Lena, through proxy, through women I've paid, through women I've trained. It is not the same. It is not, honestly, even close." He stopped. He looked tired. He looked his age, which was 51, and which showed that night in the way his eyes had a little more softness under them than usual. "So when you put Kelly in the east bedroom," he said, "I understood immediately that you had just turned my hobby into somebody's job, which is what it should have been all along. I have been waiting, to be honest, Lena, I have been waiting for a while to meet the person who could do what I could not. I didn't know I was waiting for her. I was not waiting for you, specifically. I don't want you to think that. I don't want you to think any of this was a plan. It wasn't. I called a restaurant 3 years ago and met a waitress who was kind to an old woman. That is the whole of what I knew. I did not know, in any sense of the word, who you would turn out to be. I could not have. He took a long breath. But here you are, he said, doing it. And it turns out you are extremely, extremely good at it. And I would very much like, if you will let me, to stop being the awkward man in the corner who bankrolls it and start being the awkward man in the corner who works for you. Legally. On paper. I would like to sign the money over. I would like Jonah to report to you, not me. I would like Elena's house in Denver to become part of the network. I would like to be, in this, your employee, not your sponsor, not your savior. Your employee. Lena stared at him. Adrian, I'm saying too much. I do that sometimes when I've thought about something for a long time. I'm sorry. No, it's Adrian. Yeah. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I don't know if I still wake up at 3 a.m. sometimes and I don't know where I am. I still can't walk into a hardware store without a plan for where the exits are. I'm not a person who runs things. I'm a person who is learning to run herself. I don't know if I can. Lena. What? You are already running it. I'm not. You are. You have 4 women you've placed. You have 2 in the house right now. You have the library. You have Phyllis covering for you. You have Elena calling you instead of me. You have a system. You've just been too tired to notice that it's a system. All I'm asking is that you let it be one on paper, so that if something happens to me, and I am not planning on anything happening to me, but I am 51 years old, Lena, and I have been a man in a lot of rooms in my life, and something happens to people, so that if something happens to me, the thing you have built does not evaporate because one man's checkbook got put in probate. That is what I am asking. She looked at him for a long time across the table. Can I think about it? She said. Yes. How long? As long as you need. That's not fair. You need an answer. I don't need one. I have spent my whole life needing answers on my timeline. It has not made me happy. I am trying something different with you. You can take all winter. You can take 2 winters. The money is in the account. The work is getting done. Nothing is on fire. She laughed. It was small. It was a little wet. Adrian. Yeah. Sometimes you talk like a man who has been to therapy. He almost smiled. The small movement. I go twice a week, he said. On Tuesdays and Fridays. His name is Dr. Owens. I started after the second woman I helped in 2014. I have not missed a month in 12 years. She stared at him. You never told me that. It didn't come up. Adrian. Lena. I'm not a saint, Lena. I don't want you to think that. I have just had a very long time to work on being less of what I was when I was younger. Dr. Owens has had to listen to a lot of it. He is a very patient man. He charges me accordingly. She laughed again. It was bigger this time. She took 2 weeks. She said yes on a Tuesday morning in late August, at breakfast, over eggs Marguerite had scrambled with chives from the garden. She said it simply. She did not make a speech. She said, okay, let Jonah draw it up. I'll sign. Adrian set down his coffee cup. Okay, he said. Don't cry. I'm not. You look like you might. I'm not going to cry, Lena. Okay. He didn't cry, but his eyes did a thing for a moment that she had never seen them do, and he got up and kissed the top of her head, which he had not done before and did not do again that year. And he left the room to make a phone call, and Lena ate the rest of her eggs alone at the long table, looking out at the meadow, and understood that she had just decided on a Tuesday in August, at 41 years old, what she was going to do with the rest of her life. That was the fall she thought a lot about the hallway. Not the way she used to think about it. She used to think about it the way you pick at a scab. Obsessive, compulsive, unable to leave it. Now she thought about it the way you think about a door you walked through a long time ago. Not with less feeling, with different feeling. She thought about the woman on the tile, the broken arm, the business card, the ringing phone, the man on the other end of it who had said Miss Carter in a voice she would hear in her head for the rest of her life. She thought about how close she had come to not calling. She had almost not called. That was the secret of her story, and she told it eventually to every woman who came through the inn. She had almost not called. She had stared at Adrian Voss's business card for 40 seconds, maybe longer, before she had dialed, and in those 40 seconds, all the usual voices had gone through her head. He won't remember me. He was just being polite. I'm overreacting. It's not that bad. It's not bad enough yet. Ryan will be sorry in the morning. Ryan is always sorry in the morning. And she had almost put the card back in the purse and waited for Ryan to come through the door. The things she told the women, the things she told Teresa, eventually, in a conversation on the porch of the cottage in October while Caleb was napping inside and the leaves were turning, was this. You don't have to wait until it's bad enough. There is no bad enough. Bad enough is a trick your brain plays on you so you don't have to do the scary thing. Bad enough is a bar that keeps moving. It moved on me for 5 years. By the time I finally called, I had a broken arm and he was breaking through a door, and if I'd waited one more week, I wouldn't have gotten to make the call at all. Do you understand me? I almost didn't get to make the call. That's the whole story. I was 5 minutes from not getting to make the call, and the only difference between me and every woman who didn't get to make the call was luck, and a card I had kept, and a hand that was working enough to dial. That is the whole difference. It is not because I was brave. It is not because I was strong. It is because I got lucky. I do not want another woman to have to be that lucky. That's what we're doing here, Teresa. That's what this is. We are trying to take luck out of it. Teresa, who had stopped crying every day by then, cried a little at that. Then she said, "Can I help?" "Yes." Can I work here? Not forever, but for now, until I'm standing. Can I help with the house? Can I help with the next one? Yes, Teresa. Okay. You're going to be very good at this. How do you know? Because you asked. Teresa came on staff in November. By the following spring, by the time Francis II was going in the ground, and Lena had been out of the hallway for almost 2 years, the inn had a small, steady team. Teresa ran intake. A woman named Pilar, from Kelly's aunt's church in Iowa, ran transport. Marguerite, who had formally retired from running Adrian's kitchen in order to run Lena's, ran the house. Mateo ran the grounds. Dr. Navarro came once a week from the city and ran medical. Dr. Rourke ran a trauma-informed support group every Tuesday night in the barn Adrian had quietly converted that winter, insulated and heated with big windows that looked out on the pond. Adrian, as promised, ran nothing. Adrian was, in the organizational chart that Jonah drew up and laminated and hung in the hallway of the main house as a joke, listed as consulting as needed. On busy days, somebody would walk past and tap the laminated chart next to his name and say, as needed by who, and Adrian, who was usually the one walking past, would say dryly, exactly, and keep going. He was still in the ways that mattered Adrian Voss. Still a man who was not fully a kind man. Still a man who handled things through channels Lena did not look at too closely. Ryan Hale, by then, was living in a converted garage behind a cousin's house in Reno, working weekends at an auto parts store. Sober. This was the detail Jonah had given her, the last time they'd updated his file, 6 months ago, for the first time in his adult life. Not because he had found God, because he could not afford not to be. Because the last drink of his he had tried to buy had been declined on a card that was no longer valid at a liquor store in a town where nobody knew him anymore, and he had walked out into a parking lot under a sky he didn't know, and he had understood, finally, that he was on the other side of something he was not going to climb back to. Lena had read that report. She had read it twice. She had put it in a drawer. She had not cried about it. She had not celebrated it. She had thought about Ryan Hale for maybe 10 minutes that night, at the kitchen sink in the cottage, washing a bowl, and at the end of the 10 minutes, she had not felt triumph. She had not felt mercy. She had felt, of all things, a kind of tired sadness for the boy he had been before he had started hitting. And then she had dried the bowl and put it on the rack and turned off the light. She did not think about him again for 6 weeks. That, she wrote in her journal that night, was the real ending. Not him begging, not him losing. The real ending was the moment he stopped being the center of the weather, The moment he became, of all the small and amazing things, a bowl she had already dried. Adrian came to dinner at the cottage most Fridays, that second year. He never stayed the night. That was a line she had held, for reasons she could and could not articulate, and he had never, once, pushed against it. One Friday in June, over the first good tomatoes of the season, Frances II, already out producing her mother, Lena put her fork down and looked at him and said, "Adrian, Lena, I think I'd like you to stay tonight." He looked at her for a long moment. "Okay. Just to sleep. I'm not—" "Lena." "What?" "I know. I don't know what I want yet. I know I want more than I've wanted. I know I want you here. I don't know—" "Lena." "What?" "I know. I was not going to ask. I was never going to ask. If you had not brought it up tonight, I was going to not bring it up 10 years from tonight. You know that, right?" "I know. Whatever you want. However fast. However slow. Never at all. Any of those is fine. Any of those." "I know." "Say it back." She almost laughed. "Any of those is fine," she said. "Good girl." She did laugh then. A real one. He stayed. On the couch, actually, not in her bed. She had said stay and he had said okay. And then, on his own, carried the spare pillow and blanket to the couch, because he was that kind of careful, still, that kind of watchful. She had lain awake for an hour in her bed listening to him breathe in the next room, and she had thought with a clarity that surprised her, "I love him. I'm going to love him. I already do." And the thing that surprised her most, the thing she wrote in her journal the next morning, in the kitchen, with her coffee, with him still asleep on her couch, in a t-shirt she had loaned him that was slightly too small, was that loving him was not scary. It was not even big. It was a small, steady, ordinary thing. It sat in her chest next to Frances the tomato and Juno at story time, and Phyllis's bifocals on a chain, next to Danny's laugh, and Marguerite's hands on a stove, and Mateo's one raised eyebrow. It was one more of the good things. That was all. She had thought her whole adult life that love was going to be the biggest thing she ever felt. It turned out that the biggest thing she was ever going to feel was the moment on the bathroom floor when she had decided to dial. Love, next to that, was a quiet afternoon. Love was a man who slept on her couch and left a folded blanket at the foot of it in the morning. Love was a hand, flat on a table, an inch from hers, waiting for her to close the distance. She closed it, eventually. They were married quietly 2 years after the hallway, in the meadow, in September, with 30 people there. Danny cried through all of it. Caleb, 5 years old by then, in a small blue suit, was the ring bearer. Marguerite cooked. Mateo built the arch. Phyllis read a short passage from a book about a mouse who found his button. Teresa, who had been formally named director of intake 8 months earlier, stood up beside Lena as her maid of honor in a dress that did not quite fit, and said, at the reception, in a toast, so short it surprised everybody, 3 years ago I cried in a library. Today I am standing here. That is the whole of what I have to say. To every woman who is crying in a library tonight, hold on. Hold on. We are coming. We are slower than we should be. We are fewer than we should be. But we are coming. And her name, she pointed at Lena, is one of the people who is coming. The meadow cried. Adrian did not. Adrian almost did, which was as close to crying as anyone had ever seen him come. The story, if you're looking for the bow on it, the tidy thing to take home, is not that Lena Carter was saved by a rich man. That is not what happened. That is the version a lazy teller would tell, and it is not true. A rich man showed up at her door in the worst hour of her life because she had the courage, under the worst circumstances a person can have courage under, to pick up a phone. She saved herself in that moment. Every moment after that, every tomato, every story time, every Teresa in the back of the library, every Tuesday session with Dr. Rourke, every cottage lock turned from the inside, Lena saved herself. Adrian helped. Marguerite helped. Mateo helped. Danny helped. Phyllis helped. Hector helped. A dozen strangers in a network Lena now ran helped, but the dialing was hers. And the living after was hers. If you are a woman in a hallway tonight hearing this, and the truth is that somebody is, because somebody is always in a hallway tonight, somewhere, here is what Lena would tell you if she were sitting on the couch across from you instead of inside a story. You do not have to be brave. You do not have to be strong. You do not have to have a plan. You do not have to have a suitcase packed. You do not even have to know where you would go. You just have to dial. You just have to make one phone call to one number, to one person who will answer. It does not have to be the right person. It does not have to be a rich man with a business card. It can be a sister you have not called in 2.5 years. It can be a cousin. It can be a neighbor whose name you do not know. It can be a hotline. It can be a 911 dispatcher you will never see again. It can be anyone. It just has to be somebody who is not him. You have to put one voice between you and the door. That is all it takes. That is the whole of it. One voice, one phone call, one small, shaking, ordinary act of reaching across the silence of a life that has been closing around you for years and asking out loud to be heard. The silence is not your friend. The silence was never your friend. Make the call. Somebody will answer. Lena did. Somebody did. And a year later, she was standing in a greenhouse in bare feet, eating a tomato named after her mother, and 2 years after that, she was standing in a meadow in a dress her sister had helped her pick out. And 3 years after that, she was sitting on a porch in late afternoon sun, watching a woman named Teresa teach a little boy how to tie his shoes, and she was... This is the ending. This is all the ending there is. She was all right. She was more than all right. She was a woman in her own life. She had her name back. She had her voice back. She had a house that was hers, and a marriage that was hers, and a job that was hers, and a story that was hers. And nobody, not Ryan Hale, not Adrian Voss, not the hallway, not the silence, not the 5 years of small daily erasure. Nobody was going to take any of it from her, ever again. The rain, the night she dialed, had come down slow at first, then steady, then loud enough to sound like someone walking on the roof. The sun, on the porch, 3.5 years later, came down gold through the cottonwoods, and Lena Carter closed her eyes and lifted her face to it and let it land.